Chapter 478. Bang! A black shadow suddenly hit the rock wall beside him. Lava splashed everywhere. Su Len immediately stopped and looked down. A 4-meter-tall lava elemental had been slammed hard against the rock wall. The lava elemental's body had cracked because of the powerful force. Before the lava elemental could recover, a huge black shadow instantly rushed up. Roar! A dragon roar sounded. Then, the huge dragon's body instantly pounced on the lava elemental that was struggling to get up. Then, the dragon's strong and powerful claws directly smashed the lava elemental to death. Then, it grabbed the elemental core from the lava elemental's body and threw it up casually. The dragon's ferocious mouth instantly closed. The hard elemental core was crushed like a peanut and swallowed into its stomach. After eating this elemental core, the dragon licked its mouth as if it was not satisfied. Its slender tail swept across and sent a lava elemental that had just chased after it flying. Then, the dragon killed another lava elemental and swallowed its elemental core. After eating a few elemental cores in a row, the dragon burped with satisfaction and walked leisurely to the deeper parts of the volcanic crater. Su Len moved his body and rubbed his ears. The circular terrain of the volcanic crater was like a loudspeaker. The dragon's roar just now reverberated back and forth in the volcanic crater, and the echo shook his eardrums until now. A young red dragon. This is a big harvest. Ruby scales. The color is so beautiful. Looking at the depths of the volcanic crater, Su Len's eyes flashed. After knowing that this nest was a young red dragon, Su Len became more cautious. The red dragon was the most powerful of the 5 color dragons. Even among the metal dragons, only the gold dragon could compete with it. Su Len took a deep breath and moved into the depths of the volcanic crater again. The red dragon's nest was in a cave deep in the volcanic crater. Next to it was boiling lava. The surrounding temperature was very high, and there was only one very narrow path leading to the cave. However, after passing through the last path and entering the cave, the front suddenly opened up. A huge dragon nest appeared in front of him. As soon as Su Len entered the cave, he felt his eyes light up. A 5-meter-tall gold hill appeared in front of him. Gold often appeared in volcanic lava. Many gold veins were formed after the lava cooled. Su Len was surprised that the red dragon had so much gold. As a young red dragon, he had more wealth than many adult dragons. It seemed that this volcano often brought out a lot of gold when it erupted. This red dragon had found a good place to live. It was already a rich dragon before it had even reached adulthood. However, now that the red dragon was full, it did not realize that it was being watched. Su Len looked at the red dragon sleeping on the gold hill. The red dragon's appearance was strong and ferocious. Its ruby-like scales had a layer of muscle outline, and there were sharp bone spurs at its joints. At this time, the red dragon was sleeping very soundly. Some transparent liquid could even be seen flowing down its ferocious jaw. As it breathed, a bubble on its nose contracted back and forth. The red dragon did not react to Su Len's arrival. Giant dragons would be less alert when they were sleeping, but as soon as they sensed danger or any movement, the sleeping giant dragon would wake up instantly. As a big boss that often appeared in various adventure stories, giant dragons were very popular. When Su Len first came to this world, he often heard some bards telling stories about knights defeating evil dragons. The story was that the evil dragon captured a princess, and the king issued a mission to ask people to save his daughter. Then, a brave knight with the help of a few companions finally defeated the evil dragon and saved the princess. There were many different versions of this story, but Su Len had always been curious. Why did the dragon capture the princess? Wasn't it supposed to rob the treasury? Even if the dragon captured the princess and threatened the king to hand over a sky-high ransom, the king would probably not agree. Therefore, the dragon capturing the princess was a completely false proposition. Wizards had done a lot of research on giant dragons, and Su Lan had naturally read these books. They even introduced the fighting attributes of giant dragons at different ages, such as which age was the most dangerous, which kind of giant dragons were friendly to humans, the power of the giant dragon's breath, and so on. In the library of the North Wind Tower, there were hundreds of books about giant dragons, such as Habits of Giant Dragons, Types of Giant Dragons, Overview of Giant Dragons, The Book of Giant Dragons, and so on. The body of a giant dragon was a very precious material. Its scales could be made into armor, its bones could be made into equipment, its meat could be eaten, and its blood could be used for the dragon blood baptism ceremony or to make bloodline potions. The dragon bloodline warlock was the most popular of all warlock schools, and also one of the most powerful warlock professions. Many bards said that after bathing in the dragon's blood, one would gain great power and one's body would become as hard as iron. This saying was actually wrong. Not everyone could bear the dragon's blood. For example, the blood of a red dragon was almost like boiling lava. If an ordinary person bathed in this dragon's blood, they would be directly burned into a pile of charcoal. The correct way was to carry out the dragon blood baptism ceremony. After this ceremony, one could strengthen one's body, immunity, and toughness, and improve one's resistance to diseases and toxins. The dragon blood baptism ceremony could be carried out multiple times. For example, the 5-color dragon could baptize the dragon's blood of all 5 colors once, and this effect could be stacked. If the dragon blood baptism ceremony was carried out to the 5th level and above, one could also gain an additional legendary level ability, Armored Skin. Of course, very few people would do this. After all, it was not easy to slay a dragon, and doing so would arouse the hostility of giant dragons. Su Lan had also seen in some wizards' letters that some wizards had carried out the dragon blood baptism ceremony on certain parts of their body in order to gain the achievement of being as hard as iron. It was said that the effect was remarkable. The red dragon had the highest IQ among the 5-color dragons, and at the same time, it was also the strongest. However, in the statistical research conducted by the wizards, it was found that the red dragon's death rate was second only to the white dragon. The white dragon was known as the stupidest giant dragon, and its IQ was only a little higher than that of a wild beast. The main reason was that the red dragon was too arrogant. Most of the other giant dragons would only go out to play when they were young and had the ability to protect themselves. However, the red dragon was different. They would go out to rob villages or adventurers when they were young dragons. This practice was undoubtedly telling others that there were dragons here, and that they should quickly become dragon slayers. Among all the dragons, the red dragon was the most vengeful. They would even hold a grudge for hundreds of years because of something. Then, one day, when they were strong enough, they would suddenly come and destroy everything. The red dragon would use a few years to come up with an attack plan. After discovering the enemy, they would directly attack. In short, they would spend a lot of time to come up with a plan. When the battle started, they would just throw it aside and attack. The red dragon in front of him was sleeping very soundly. Giant dragons that had just eaten would have a good sleep. Su Lan carefully moved back and forth in the dragon's cave. Soon, he had set up a binding circle. With a burst of strong magic light, the red dragon in front of him suddenly opened its eyes. Binding circle. Spell maximization. 8 silver rune chains appeared in an instant and directly pinned the red dragon to the ground. The red dragon that had just woken up struggled to get up. Who is sneakily attacking the great lava king? The red dragon roared angrily. Its huge body violently struggled to get rid of the chains. The 8 silver rune chains were pulled out of shape, and the entire cave shook slightly. Soon, it found Su Lan standing next to it. The red dragon took a deep breath. Its 2 huge eyes burst into flames, and its chest bulged. In the next second, it was about to spit out a scorching breath. A light flashed on Su Lan's body, and a shadow tentacle instantly appeared. It quickly wrapped around the red dragon's ferocious mouth and violently stopped the dragon's breath that it was about to spit out. For a moment, the red dragon's cheeks, which were originally dark red, turned red. Its two eyes bulged out, and large amounts of flames came out of its nostrils and mouth. Its entire head was on fire. The red dragon that was forcefully stopped felt very uncomfortable. After a while, this situation disappeared. Plumes of black smoke came out of the red dragon's nostrils, mouth, and ears. The red dragon that had recovered stared at Su Len. Its body began to struggle with all its might, trying to get rid of the chains. The angry red dragon exploded with a shocking amount of power. Su Len was only an advanced wizard, and the binding circle he cast was soon on the verge of collapsing. Seeing this, the red dragon in front of him struggled even harder. It had already decided that once it broke free, it would torture this wizard in front of it. Why bother? Can't you just stay put? Su Len curled his lips as he looked at the red dragon that was struggling violently. Bang! 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 Su Len smiled as he looked at the red dragon in front of him. He didn't care at all that it had broken free. You're quite active, but you still need to be trained to be a mount. Mount? The red dragon was stunned for a moment, and then it became even angrier. Damn human, you want to use me as a mount? Die! The red dragon angrily pounced at Su Len. It's really hard to convince a dragon to be a mount. Su Len shook his head in disappointment and dodged the red dragon's attack. However, when he thought about having a cool red dragon as a mount, Su Len decided to persuade this red dragon. He believed that as long as he was reasonable, this red dragon would agree in the end. Chapter 479. Dragon's Breath. A scorching dragon's breath came out of the red dragon's mouth. The cone-shaped flame covered a large area. A second before the dragon's breath drowned Su Len, a teleportation light flashed from his body. Sullen's figure instantly appeared near the red dragon's head. 5 lightning whips. Su Len flicked his wrist gently, and a lightning whip more than 20 meters long appeared in his hand. Su Len swung it forward, and the 5 lightning whips instantly restrained the red dragon. Lightning crackled continuously, and a large amount of lightning exploded, causing the red dragon to scream in agony. Damn human! I'm going to kill you! The red dragon roared angrily, and the sound seemed to shake the entire cave. Some rocks slid down from the top of the cave. Bullsh *T. Su Len curled his lips and said. Then, he swung hard, and the lightning whips appeared again. They ruthlessly whipped the red dragon's body, and the hard scales on its body were directly shattered. Su Len did not stop. The 5 lightning whips continued to whip the red dragon, and the red dragon screamed in agony. How about it? Think about it. How about becoming my mount? Sullen's hand shook gently, and a lightning whip swayed in his hand. When the red dragon saw the lightning whips, it could not help but tremble. After hearing Sullen's words, it could not help but roar, "You're dreaming. Human. Even if I die, I won't become your mount. Wishful thinking. You'd better give up. How can I, the great Onyxvia, be a human's mount? Unless I'm dead. Why are you so loud?" Su Len rubbed his ears and whipped it. Looks like we're on the same page. Su Len shook his head in disappointment. With a flip of his hand, a long halberd surrounded by countless lightning powers appeared. The red dragon that was dodging the lightning whips froze. Then, it was instantly bound by the 5 lightning whips and could not move. She instantly sensed the dangerous aura of the weapon, and a strong sense of crisis spread from her heart. It seemed that as long as she moved slightly, she would receive a fatal blow. The faintly discernible traces of blood on the weapon gave her a terrifying pressure. When the red dragon saw the human in front of her pick up the storm halberd and was about to attack, Onyxvia panicked. Looks like there's going to be a red skull ornament on the wall in my study. Su Len said regretfully. Hearing that Su Luan was going to hang his head on the wall, the red dragon on Ixvia's face changed. She suddenly said eagerly, "Stop. Stop. Human. Let's talk." The sharp halberd blade stopped below the red dragon's slender neck. The red dragon Onyxvia only felt a slight chill on its neck, and the scales on its body stood up. Su Len heard Onyxvia onyx you, and said of human, "Can you move that weapon away from me? It's too close. I don't feel comfortable." Onyxvia said as she twisted her body uneasily. "Alright, I'll fulfill your request." Su Len put the storm halberd away. "From today onwards, you're my mount. If you refuse, you can move." Su Len waved the storm halberd back and forth in the air at the red dragon. Onyxvia looked at the storm halberd and did not dare to move. "Since you're not moving, I'll take it that you agree." Su Len looked at the motionless red dragon and said happily. "Look, isn't this great? We can still be on the same page. I like this kind of giant dragon who understands the situation. Isn't it just being a mount? It's not a big deal. I'll be very gentle. Alright, since you've agreed, I'll let you go. There's a saying that goes, a wise dragon submits to circumstances. You should learn more about it." Su Len said as he put the storm halberd back into his storage space. Then, he took out a self-created general template from his storage space. "Go to hell." Su Len removed the lightning whip from the red dragon's body. After the storm halberd that made her heart palpitate disappeared, the red dragon Onyxvia was filled with endless anger. She was about to spit out dragon breath, but in the next second, a sharp pain came from her chin. Bang! A huge force came from her chin, and the dragon breath that she was about to spit out was scattered again. The red dragon Onyxvia's head instantly lifted up, and the dragon breath of fire was spat into the air. Before she could react, a huge force pressed her head against the ground and rubbed it back and forth. Her body was also pulled up involuntarily. She then turned around and smashed into the rock wall beside her with a bang. The hard rock wall cracked, and the huge red dragon fell down powerlessly. The red dragon Onyxvia didn't know what had happened at all. In just an instant, she couldn't help but fly up. This was the first time she had encountered this in her dragon life. Even in her inherited memories, such a thing had never happened. A human actually had more strength than her. How was this possible? Not to mention humans, even giants didn't have such strength. Su Len moved his wrist. His strength had reached 50, and a red dragon in its prime only had around 45. Su Len easily flung the red dragon away. After he raised his strength to 50, he hadn't encountered any creature with a higher strength than him. Young dragons don't talk about martial ethics. Sneak attack. Su Len said to the red dragon in front of him with a smile. He casually used a self-created hero template on the red dragon, and a familiar system notification sounded in his ears. Ding! You have used self-created hero template on the red dragon Onyxvia. Self-created hero activated. Please choose a hero's character trait, talent. Horsemanship, hidden weapon, throwing, sword skills, spear skills, archery skills, charm, ferocity, regeneration, calm, elemental affinity, chi return, might, choose might. Might, the target has a strong aura, causing a strong sense of oppression to the surrounding enemies. There is a certain chance of forcing the enemy to escape or surrender. Detected that the target has the Draconic Aura talent. Might Aura talent has been upgraded to Advanced Draconic Aura. Please choose a skill. Soaring Dragon. Selection complete. Hero template generated. A light flashed, and the red dragon Onyxvia became one of Sullen's heroes. Slap. Su Len slapped the red dragon Onyxvia's head. Stop pretending to be dead. Get up. We're going home. The red dragon Onyxvia got up from the ground with a hopeless expression. Su Luan was very satisfied with this red dragon. After circling around the red dragon, the more he looked at it, the more he felt it was mighty. If he rode this big guy out, the rate of turning heads was absolutely 100%. It was better than any other mount. The red dragon was the strongest among the color dragons. They were selfish, arrogant, and liked to hold grudges. Many evil dragons in stories were based on the red dragon's template. They were greedy and had an endless greed for treasures. Basically, every red dragon could be said to be a destroyer. However, this was not a problem for Su Len. Training was something that Su Len loved the most. As for how to train a red dragon, Su Luan was ready to make a complete plan in his mind. He believed that he would be able to train a well-behaved red dragon. Besides, red dragons were very eye-catching. Raising such a red dragon was a symbol of strength. In the dragon's nest, Su Luan packed up the gold in front of him and put them into his storage space. At the same time, he explained to the crestfallen red dragon next to him, "Don't worry, these gold are still yours. I'm just keeping them for you. Besides, this gold hasn't been fully smelted. It's full of impurities. I'll help you smelt it again after I bring it back. Of course, you'll have to pay a small fee. By the way, you know transformation, right? Turn into a human first. Your body is too big. I'm not used to looking up to talk to people," Su Len said as he put the gold into his storage space. Although Red Dragon Onyxvia was very reluctant, she could not disobey Sullen's orders. With a flash of light, the originally huge and ferocious red dragon disappeared and was replaced by a red-haired girl. This red-haired girl was Onyxvia's human form. She had long red hair and a wild look on her face. Her body was very curvy, and her skin was white and smooth like jade. There were some outlines of muscles under her skin. Her facial features had the characteristics of a European and American. She looked very beautiful. She was wearing a fiery red leather coat. Her legs were slender and strong, and her calves were straight. It would be a pity if her legs were not used for riding on a tricycle. Dragons had the ability to transform at will. Not only could they transform into humans, but they could also transform into elves. They could choose to transform into humans. Of course, once this human form was fixed, it would become a spell effect and would not consume any magic power. However, if they wanted to transform into other forms, it would still consume magic power. "You're pretty. Come, smile. Don't cry," Su Len said after putting away all the gold. There was still some yellow metal material on the ground. It was not gold, but brass that was close to the color of gold. "Look, you still have so much brass here. You're cheating," Su Len said bitterly as he pointed at the brass in front of him. "You don't have gold, but you're using brass to make up the numbers. Is there even the most basic trust between humans and dragons? How disappointing. I'm only 96 years old. I'm just a young dragon. I don't have that much wealth. I want to make my gold look more comfortable when I sleep. Can't I?" Onyxvia said, rolling her eyes. Chapter 480. To be honest, although the strength of a young dragon was not bad, there was still a big gap between it and a real powerhouse. The strength of a young dragon was around level 17, and it would not become a legend until it was in its prime. Of course, this was the strength of a dragon after it grew up normally. The strength of some dragons with magical fetishes could not be divided by age at all. Who knew if a young dragon was also a legendary wizard? Although this kind of thing was rare, it did not happen. For example, a white dragon nested in a big glacier. If it was in its normal growth state, the time when a dragon could roam around was at least when it was in its prime. In the young dragon period, 0 to 3 years old, dragons in this period generally lived under the protection of their mother dragons. They needed to eat a lot of food every day and hid in their nest to live. Even the most evil red dragon would not chase them out during the young dragon period. Of course, there were some unlucky young dragons who were thrown into the wild as soon as they were born. The lucky ones hid everywhere, and the unlucky ones directly became a delicious meal in someone else's pot. The survival rate of young dragons without the protection of their parents was very low. Of course, there were also those who survived successfully, such as a silver dragon born in a pot and a young dragon born in a sewer. These young dragons had once received the title of King of the Sewer. It was said that the dragons who had received this title were all proficient in the way of evading and finally became the overlord of a region. For a dragon, learning the way of evading was a very important lesson. However, according to the Pride of Dragons, more than 90% of them were very repulsed by this lesson. Next was the young dragon period, 4 to 10 years old. The dragons in this period began to learn to hunt independently under the protection of their mother. At the same time, they began to improve their fighting skills, understand the knowledge of the dragon inheritance, and improve their knowledge. Of course, they also had to face the competition of their siblings. This was especially fierce among the evil dragons. Snatching food and bullying other siblings were basic skills. During the young dragon period, 11 to 25 years old, the dragons in this period had some self-protection ability. For the metal dragons, their parents would give them some guidance, and then these young dragons would be chased out of the house. Of course, they would allow the young dragons to continue to hunt and live in their territory. As for the evil dragons, they would not be treated so well. They would be chased out of the house by their parents one day, and then they would start to hide everywhere. Some dragons would also work together with their siblings to survive. Dragons in this period would be very careful. It wasn't until the young dragons, 26 to 50 years old, that they truly possessed some strength. At this time, there were very few creatures in the wild that could pose a threat to them. When they entered the young dragon age, 51 to 100 years old, the dragons finally had some of the elegance of the dragons. The kings of the underground sewers, who used to hide everywhere in the past, could finally occupy their own territories and become kings. They didn't have to live in fear all the time. The dragons of this era would recruit some goblins, kobolds, and other monsters to serve them. Onyx Vaya was now 96 years old, and there were still 4 years before the dragon reached adulthood. After leaving the dragon's den, she wandered in the fire elemental plane and finally found a safe place with gold and food. However, she didn't expect to be caught by Sulen. Not only was her gold confiscated, but she also became his mount. Sob, 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 it's too hard for me. After 100 years, the dragon would enter adulthood after a long slumber. The adult dragon would then be able to roam around. For example, robbing someone for no reason. Kidnapping a princess. Robbing a city, these were all basic skills. Of course, after the dragons reached 200 years old, they would enter adulthood and become more powerful. After that, the dragons would enter old age. At this time, the dragons would try to avoid head-on combat. More often, they would let their followers fight or use spells to fight. For the dragons to truly shake the continent and become like the Wings of Frost, the Bane of the North, the Wings of Death, the Scarlet Bane, and other dragons that made the entire material world tremble, they would have to enter the ancient dragon age. The dragons of this age, as long as they were still alive, were extremely difficult to deal with. The long years had allowed them to master a lot of knowledge and become cunning at the same time. At this time, even legendary wizards would have to take a detour if they encountered an ancient dragon. As for the ancient dragons, they rarely existed in the material world. Onyx Vaya watched Sulen take away all her treasures and she became his mount. Her heart was full of grievances. She comforted herself again and again. Being caught now was nothing. When she became stronger in the future, she would definitely teach this man a lesson. Oh right, she also needed to practice the flame whip. When the time came, she would hang him up and whip him every day. Slap. Just as Onyx Vaya was fantasizing about how she would whip Su Len in the future, she was suddenly slapped awake from her beautiful dream. Who dares to slap the great lava king? I did it. Su Len looked at her expressionlessly and said. What are you thinking? Didn't you hear what I just said? I heard it. Onyx Vaya said guiltily when she saw Sullen's expressionless handsome face. If you heard it, then restrain your energy. I'm going to activate the plane teleportation. If there's a problem, I can't guarantee that you won't be torn in half by the power of the dimension. Onyx Vaya retracted her energy, then Su Len activated the teleportation beacon on his body. A teleportation light rose and instantly covered the two of them. In the next second, their figures disappeared from the fire elemental plane. A teleportation light descended from the sky, and Su Len and Onyx Vaya appeared on the astrology platform. Welcome back. You've worked hard. Hathaway smiled at Su Len. It's okay. How are the two lava elementals? Su Len moved his body, and the dizziness from the teleportation quickly disappeared. They've been sent to the secret realm. Hathaway said. She then looked at Onyx Vaya and asked, Did you bring this back? Su Len looked at Onyx Vaya and said, My new mount, a red dragon. What do you think? Isn't it cool? Red dragon? Hathaway looked at the red-haired girl in front of her in surprise. This was a red dragon. This beautiful girl with a heroic spirit in front of her was a red dragon? Hathaway, who saw a dragon for the first time, couldn't help but widen her eyes and size up Onyx Vaya. A living dragon. She was indeed much prettier than the dragons in books. Can you transform into a dragon and let me see? By the way, you're not an adult yet. After learning that Onyx Vaya was a dragon, Hathaway immediately pounced on her excitedly. She circled around the red dragon and kept gesturing at her. Do you have any extra scales? Give me a few to study. Also, you have so much blood on you. Let me draw some of it. Are you like a human now? It should be okay for me to pinch you. Hathaway stared at Onyx Vaya with glowing eyes. The little red dragon, who had just arrived at the wizard tower, only felt panic in her heart. When she felt the shocking elemental energy fluctuation in Hathaway's body, she was so scared that she didn't dare to move. However, this woman in front of me is so scary. She actually wants to pull out my scales and draw my blood. Master won't leave me alone, right? I want to go home, sob sob sob. Looking at Hathaway's posture, Su Len shook his head helplessly and pulled her aside. Alright, Hathaway, you're scaring her. Onyx Vaya just arrived and hasn't familiarized herself with the environment. These things can wait until you're familiar with them. Familiar? I don't want to know her. I don't want to be familiar with her. So scary. Onyx Vaya shouted in her heart, but she didn't dare to open her mouth. She wanted to escape, but her body was bound by the contract. She could only stand there, feeling wronged. Okay. Hearing Sullen's words, Hathaway thought for a moment and agreed. It was indeed not good to touch her for the first time, but it would be fine when they were familiar with each other. Anyway, such a big dragon couldn't run away. Let me introduce you. This is Onyx Vaya, a young red dragon, my mount. Su Len said proudly. This is Hathaway, one of the masters of this wizard tower, a legendary wizard. This is Chrissy, the head servant of the succubus. The other two are the queen of the winged people, Alex and Phyllis. They are not here for the time being. I'll introduce them to you later. Su Len introduced several people and said. I'll give you access to the wizard tower. You can come here in the future. Of course, some places are not allowed to enter, such as the library and the seclusion room. You can use these. If you have nothing to do, you can read more books. Don't always think about relying on your talent to make a living. Learning more spells is good for you. Su Len said lightly. Okay, I'll go arrange a place for you to stay first. Su Len brought Onyxvia to the warehouse of the wizard tower. As soon as she entered the warehouse, the little red dragon's eyes immediately became sparkling stars behind her. Countless golden lights dazzled her eyes. A gold mountain, a real gold mountain. More than 80% of the gold of the entire northern city was stored here. In addition to the gold, there was also a pile of magic gems next to it. The whole treasury was shining with golden light. This. So much gold? The little red dragon stared at the gold mountain in front of her, dumbfounded. Then, she jumped up excitedly and plunged into the gold mountain. After a few seconds, she came out on the other side of the gold mountain. Then, she grabbed the gold with both hands and swam in the gold mountain. Su Len didn't care about her. Instead, he put the gold in his storage space into the treasury first. Looks like you're very satisfied with your new home. Then you can live here from now on. Remember, without my permission, you can't leave anything behind. Otherwise, he. As he spoke, Su Len looked back and forth at the little red dragon. Chapter 481. Isn't it exciting to face so much gold every day? Su Len said with a smile. Yes, yes. Onyxvia nodded her little head repeatedly. Do you want it? Yes, yes. Then guard the treasury carefully. As long as there are no problems, I will take out some as your reward. Su Len said. Really? You're not lying to me? Onyxvia said with shining eyes. Of course it's true, I'm not lying to you. Su Len said with a serious face. After receiving Sullen's guarantee, the little red dragon excitedly rolled around on the golden mountain and muttered, I'm rich, I'm rich. Seeing the little red dragon's appearance, Su Len laughed in his heart. Do you think you can protect this gold? When the time comes, you'll have someone secretly take some of it away and your reward will be gone. Maybe you can use this as an excuse to train her. As an upright king, it was still very fulfilling to train an evil dragon into a new age dragon with good morals. Yes, that's what I'll do. After making arrangements for Onyxvia, Su Len and Hathaway went to the secret realm together. He had already enslaved 2 giant magma elementals. With these 2 giant magma elementals, the resources to build the obsidian factory were almost ready. Su Len now needed to choose a suitable location, preferably an extinct volcano. If there really wasn't one, then he could only create it himself. Su Len didn't find any volcanoes in the northern wilderness, but there were still some hot springs in the northern wilderness. The presence of hot springs meant that the underground magma was still very active. Su Len and Hathaway began to use spells in the secret realm to search. He planned to build the obsidian factory in the secret realm. After some searching, Su Len finally found that the magma under a mountain in the secret realm was very active. There were also some hot springs distributed here. Su Len used the spring surge spell to observe the situation underground, then began to prepare the array with Hathaway. Since there was no volcano, he could only use the power of the magma elementals to create a small crater. He brought the 2 giant magma elementals here and commanded them to turn the surrounding land into magma. At the same time, Su Len and Hathaway also cast their magic power and guided the power of the 2 magma elements deeper. Under their mana, the originally hard rocks quickly softened and the bodies of the 2 lava elementals started burning. The lava on their bodies quickly flowed and slid down their bodies. The surrounding rocks quickly turned into lava and the bodies of the 2 lava elementals gradually swelled up. Su Len and Hathaway used their magic to guide the magma elemental power down. Wherever the magma elemental power passed, the rocks and soil underground would turn into magma. This power did not stop despite the obstruction of the soil and rocks, and continued to spread deep underground. Along with the powerful surge of magic power, the originally calm mountain range constantly issued a series of rumbling sounds. The earth trembled violently, as if there was a huge monster under the ground that wanted to rush out. Rumble. Scorching magma spewed out from the ground and a large amount of rocks and soil were directly overturned. The original mountain top was directly overturned hundreds of meters away and the entire mountain pass turned into a magma pool. The surging magma continued to spurt out and then flowed down the mountain, but most of it cooled and hardened in the flow. Sulen and Hathaway floated above the crater and commanded the two lava elementals to build the magma pool according to their ideas. Obsidian was a very important strategic resource. Many places required the use of this material. For example, the floating city was best built entirely out of obsidian. At the same time, the obsidian golems also required large amounts of obsidian. An obsidian factory was a must. With the power of the two lava elementals, they communicated with the underground magma and then completely changed the environment here into a volcanic crater. Next, they needed to build the obsidian factory near this volcanic crater. Sulen directly dug out caves in the volcano and then guided the magma out of these caves. At the same time, they needed to build an energy channel from the elemental pool to supply the energy consumption of the obsidian factory. When magma cooled down, it was easy to form obsidian, but because of the various impurities in the magma, the quality of the obsidian was also very problematic. Therefore, they needed to make a purification array first and purify the magma through this array. The purified magma could not be used directly. In order to obtain high-quality obsidian, they also needed a magma purification array to purify the magma after purification. After the purified magma was quickly cooled down, it would become obsidian. Hathaway made an ice storm array, which could directly transform the area covered by the array into a world of ice and snow. This environment was very suitable for forming obsidian. The quality of obsidian was divided into 5 grades. The highest grade of obsidian was called the 10 Victory Stone. This was a delicate translucent gem that belonged to the gem grade. This type of obsidian was the most expensive and the most precious. Second-tier obsidian was of lower quality and wasn't transparent, but its magic and physical resistance wasn't inferior to first-tier obsidian. Third-tier obsidian was the most common, and it was also the most commonly used obsidian in floating cities. As for the 4th and 5th grade obsidian, it was basically useless. Sulen built the obsidian factory to produce obsidian above the 3rd grade. The construction of the obsidian factory was very fast. With Sulen and Hathaway using magic, the construction of the entire project was very fast. Hathaway directly flattened an area on the volcano's hillside. Below, she used mud to rock to turn the debris into large rocks and reinforced it with harden to build a platform that covered an area of 500 square meters. The obsidian production line would be placed here. After the magma was led here from the volcano, it would be purified, and then cooled to finally form pieces of obsidian. The obsidian factory could also be automated, but Sulen did not want to use legendary elemental stones in this, so he transferred a steel golem and a few rock golems to the factory. These steel golems and rock golems would be responsible for the operation of the entire obsidian factory. At the same time, the rock golems and steel golems also needed to be modified. Hathaway needed to instill the obsidian production process into these golems. Because he did not use the tower spirit to control the entire factory for fully automatic construction, Su Luan planned to inject the production process of the obsidian factory into these golem puppets. Each golem puppet was responsible for one step. There were still a lot of rock golems in the northern city. Hathaway selected a few rock golems from the wizard tower and brought them to the secret plane. Hathaway came to the center of the secret plane and handed over the control of these golems to Tower Spirit Number 1. At the same time, she instilled the production line technology of the obsidian factory into these golems. Although the soul cores of these magic golems weren't large, it was still possible to imbue them with simple techniques. As for the steel magic golem, Hathaway imbued it with all the maintenance techniques of the obsidian factory. This steel magic golem would act as a technical consultant for the obsidian factory. As the soul energy in several soul crystals was extracted, a huge amount of energy and soul power was instilled into the soul core of the steel golem. As time went by, a large amount of technology was successfully instilled into the soul core of the golem. However, after instilling the knowledge and skills, all the previous combat skills of the steel golem were replaced. This steel golem had completely become a support golem. At the same time, Sulen asked Tower Spirit No. 1 to transfer a few steel golems to guard the obsidian factory to prevent other creatures from approaching and destroying the factory. After instilling the technology, these golems would work in the obsidian factory. They would maintain the normal operation of the factory every day, and at the same time, they would store the obsidian produced in the warehouse according to the grade of the obsidian. When these golems ran out of energy, they would go to the energy channel to recharge. As long as there were no problems, the obsidian factory would continue to produce obsidian. If there were any problems in the factory, the steel golem would first come to repair it. After Hathaway instilled all the maintenance technology of the obsidian factory, this steel golem could solve most of the problems in the obsidian factory. If there was a problem that the steel golem could not solve, Sulen and Hathaway would be notified to come and repair it. After the construction of the main building was completed, the following work was much simpler. Because the construction of the obsidian factory was rushed, many details needed to be supplemented. These tasks would be completed soon. The raw material of the obsidian factory was magma. The two magma elementals would constantly transport magma from the depths of the ground. This work was difficult for others, but it was very easy for the two magma elementals. After all, they were born with the ability to manipulate magma. And with their existence, the magma pool would not cool down. After checking again, Hathaway nodded to Sulen. Everything was normal, and then she started the production line of the obsidian factory. Scorching magma spewed out of the channel, and then flowed along the pipeline into a purification circle. As the circle operated, a strange magic wave appeared, and all the magma passing through here was purified of impurities. These impurities were not useless. These impurities contained various metal substances, which would be collected and sent to the blacksmith workshop for smelting. Then, the magma entered the purification circle. After these two processes, a stone golem next to him opened the gate, and energy rushed out. The whole circle was activated, and the magma quickly cooled down under the effect of the circle. A piece of obsidian appeared in front of him. Chapter 482. The surging magma flowed into it, and after a quick cooling, pieces of obsidian appeared on the workbench. Sulen picked up a piece of obsidian that was still warm and examined it. Third-grade obsidian had met the production requirements. This obsidian production line was mainly used to produce third-grade obsidian. Sulen collected all the newly produced obsidian for inspection. The new factory had just opened, and the quality of the obsidian produced was not very stable, so some adjustments were needed. His requirements were not high, but at the very least, the obsidian produced had to be of third-grade quality. As for the lower quality obsidian, whether it was the obsidian golem or the floating city, they would not use obsidian of this quality. Hundreds of obsidian stones were quickly appraised by Sulen, and the results were not bad. More than 90% of the obsidian stones were third class or above, and there were more than a dozen second-class obsidian stones. As for the top first-class obsidian stones, there was no such thing as a first-class obsidian stone. For this kind of newly established obsidian factory, it was already very good that the obsidian produced could reach this level. After the obsidian factory was operating normally, Sulen and Hathaway began to make some technical adjustments to the factory. After some adjustments, the obsidian production line began again. With the surge of elemental energy, magma flowed into it again. After a few rounds of purification, obsidian appeared in front of Sulen. After some adjustments, the quality of the obsidian produced this time was obviously higher. Su Len took out all the obsidian in this batch and then tested it again. Sure enough, the results were much better than the last time. 96% of the obsidian in front of him were third grade. This yield was already considered good. If he wanted to continue improving, he would need to upgrade and improve it bit by bit in the future production process. After completing the transformation, Su Len completely activated the entire obsidian factory. A strange energy wave came, and the obsidian factory officially began to operate. One by one, the stone golems began to work, and the steel golem also began to work. After the steel golem started working, Su Luen arranged for a few steel golems to patrol outside the obsidian factory. Their current area of protection was the obsidian factory. As long as they did not enter the obsidian factory, they would activate their combat program and attack. In order to protect the obsidian factory, Su Len had also built a sensor formation in the obsidian factory. As long as someone else entered, the sensor formation would be triggered and a signal would be transmitted to the steel golem. At the same time, the obsidian factory would enter a state of alert. Looking at the functioning obsidian factory, Su Len nodded with satisfaction. The production area of the obsidian factory was not large. After the magma entered the production area, it would quickly form obsidian. With sufficient obsidian, the next production line of rock golems would be put on the agenda. Compared to the golem factory, the technology of the obsidian factory was too simple. The most difficult part of this factory was actually the magma production. This factory was mainly to provide raw materials for the future obsidian factory. The technical requirements of the obsidian factory were a bit high. Hathaway was now drawing the blueprints. After the blueprints were completed, the factory would be upgraded. The energy consumption of the obsidian factory was very high. Su Len planned to build a new elemental pool here. At the same time, Su Len also needed to prepare a legendary soul core. The golem factory was generally divided into 3 parts. The first part was carving. The stone needed to be carved, and at the same time, the body parts of the golem had to be made. This part required a high-precision carving process, and at the same time, a set of micro-carving machines was also needed. The second part was the magic pattern inscription on the golem. For this part, a fully automatic magic pattern inscription machine had already been built when the clay golems were produced. After the magic pattern inscription, it would enter the third part. The parts of these golems would be sent to the assembly workshop, where they would be assembled one by one. The assembled golems would be sent to the warehouse. These golems did not have a soul core installed, so they needed to be activated by the wizard himself. Each golem would cost a soul crystal. The rock golem factory was not built for the time being. Su Len and Hathaway left the secret plane. When they left, the two brought back the clay golems they had produced during this time. These clay golems could be used after being activated. However, because the clay golems produced were basic models, they still needed to be modified. For example, a set of cleaning programs and housekeeping programs could be added to them so that these clay golems could become qualified servants. After these clay golems were activated, they would be sent to various parts of the Northwind Tower to work. If it weren't for the high cost of mining clay golems, Su Len could have made a batch of mining golems. Compared to mining clay golems, the kobolds and durgars were obviously more cost-effective. As long as they were given some food and liquor, these kobolds and durgars would complete the work with quality and quantity guaranteed. After the construction of the obsidian factory was completed, Su Len returned to Sanfelto City. After a period of fighting, the Marquis of Savoy finally won a great victory, completely wiping out the few border nobles. These border nobles had originally colluded with other countries and obtained support, wanting to split from the Kingdom of Florence. However, after Alex and Karina fought off the wizards sent by the surrounding countries, the rebels lost their biggest support. Without the intervention of other countries, the strength of these border nobles was no match for the Marquis of Savoy. After a few wild battles, the Marquis of Savoy successfully surrounded Hallwind City. After that, the rebels who were unwilling to admit defeat still refused to come out. They wanted to rely on the city walls to continue resisting. Moreover, it was already winter, and the temperature in Hallwind City began to drop. These rebels began to place their hopes in the winter. When the army couldn't withstand the cold of winter, they would naturally retreat. However, things didn't go according to their plan. These rebels weren't wrong. Although the Marquis of Savoy's army were all northerners, they couldn't fight outside for a long time in winter. They just forgot about the wizards. In fact, these rebels also subconsciously ignored the wizards. As a result, on a dark night, Alex and Karina used flying and invisibility spells to enter Hallwind City. They then used a spell to confuse humans and easily took control of a few groups of soldiers at the city gate. They had them move the miscellaneous items out of the gate and open the gate. The Marquis of Savoy, who had long been prepared, led his army into the city without shedding a drop of blood. This famous city in the northwestern territory of the Kingdom of Florence was easily breached. The remaining rebel leaders didn't even have the chance to escape and were directly captured. After completing the task of quelling the rebellion, the rebellious nobles around Hallwind City were either captured or killed. Only a few were lucky enough to escape. Of course, those who managed to escape were mostly small fries. The Marquis of Savoy had already prepared ahead of time for the main rebellious nobles and captured them as soon as possible. Sulan had already ordered the Marquis of Savoy to not kill the innocent in this mission. Wars in this era were very cruel, and massacres were common. But this time, the target of the war was within his own country. He did not want Marquis Savoy to lead his men to plunder and return home with plentiful spoils of war, only to leave behind a pile of chicken feathers for him. The rebellion this time wasn't because the commoners couldn't survive. It was a power struggle between the nobles, so the ordinary soldiers and commoners were basically coerced. Therefore, these soldiers and commoners were pardoned. After entering the city, the Marquis of Savoy had already restrained the soldiers from looting. At the same time, Alex and Karina stepped forward and beheaded a dozen soldiers who openly disobeyed the order. Only then did the soldiers obediently not take a step forward. After capturing the rebellious nobles, the Marquis of Savoy didn't kill them directly. Instead, he planned to send them to Sulan in San Felto. At the same time, the wealth of these nobles was all plundered. The wealth was divided into 4 parts. Sulan took a quarter of it, the Marquis of Savoy took another quarter, and the remaining quarter was used to cover the costs of logistics. The last quarter was the reward for the soldiers. Unlike the soldiers in northern Battlefront City, the Marquis of Savoy's army had very low military expenses. Usually, they would only be able to maintain basic expenses. Only during war would they be given a starting fee. Then, during battles, they would loot. Now that Sulan forbade looting, they naturally had to be given a reward. This model could save a lot of money on raising soldiers, which was also the state of most armies in this world. Apart from the gold and silver, in fact, the biggest harvest this time was the nobles' land, houses, factories, and mines. Apart from a portion of the wealth being rewarded to those who performed well in this battle, most of the rest fell into Sulan's hands. These shops, mines, and real estate were all very valuable. Sulan had already put them under his caravan. As for the land, Sulan was preparing to sell it. These nobles controlled more than 70% of the land in Cold Wind City. Sulan took out some of these lands to recruit refugees, and let others sell the rest. When all these lands were planted next year, the tax revenue of Cold Wind City would definitely reach a new high. Chapter 483. The Marquis of Savoy escorted the rebellious nobles to the capital. Sulan ordered a public trial of these nobles and finally sentenced them to death. As for the relatives of these nobles, they were punished to be slaves. These slaves were not allowed to be pardoned, but the descendants of these nobles could obtain the status of commoners after paying a ransom. For the rebels, Sulen gave them the harshest punishment, and Sulen's punishment of the rebellious nobles' relatives was also approved. Many people even thought that Sulen's punishment was too good for them. In this era, the relatives of the enemy were often dealt with by killing them. The women were sold as slaves, and the children were castrated and sold as slaves. In comparison, Sulen's way of cooking was completely merciful. San Filto City. After Sulen successfully defeated the southern rebels, Sulen's prestige also rose to the peak. When he went out to fight, he even left a backup plan. With the cooperation of both inside and outside, he successfully defeated and captured the rebellious nobles. A very important reason for the southern rebellion this time was that the number of nobles in San Filto City decreased by 2/3. These nobles were captured, which led to a large amount of wealth being obtained by Sulen. At the same time, he also had enough money and land to reward his soldiers. After cleaning up a group of rebellious nobles, Sulen's control over the kingdom of Florence became stronger and stronger. Now, because the Marquis of Savoy had solved the rebellion in the north, the entire north wind and part of the south were under Sulen's control. Since Sulen ascended the throne, a series of turmoil had occurred in the kingdom of Florence, and it finally ended with Sulen's victory. Now, Sulen could be said to be the king with the greatest control over the kingdom of Florence in the history of the kingdom of Florence. Kingdom of Florence, Central Plains, San Filto City, Champs-Élysées Castle. Numerous carriages were parked outside the castle. The entire castle was brightly lit. Teams of elite soldiers in metal armor and armed with weapons were patrolling around the castle. Outside the castle, well-dressed attendants were busy bringing in plates of delicately prepared food. The magic lamps in the castle lit up the entire hall. The crystal lamps flickered with colorful brilliance, making the gorgeously dressed noble ladies even more charming. Although a large number of nobles in San Filto City had been stripped of their titles and imprisoned, it seemed to have nothing to do with these noble ladies. At this time, these noble ladies were divided into small groups and gathered together to whisper. From time to time, their eyes would fall on a young man in the crowd. This banquet was specially held to celebrate the victory of the rebellion. In addition to the original nobles, there were also a large number of soldiers who were rewarded for their merits in this battle. These soldiers could be said to be very popular in San Filto City now. Sulen was very generous to his men. Many of them were given titles, and each of them was entrusted with important tasks by him. Since the North Town began to produce rum, white sugar, and high-end perfume, noble banquets had become more and more luxurious. After the economic boom, the social atmosphere gradually became more open. Many nobles would look for their other half at the banquet. Now that the king valued the emerging nobles with military merits, many noble ladies turned their eyes to the young men in the banquet. These people were not only old, but their strength was not bad. Basically, they had reached the level of Grand Knight and Knight Commander. Because they had been practicing martial arts all year round, these people looked extraordinary, energetic, and well-proportioned. They were far from the pale, flimsy, and pale rich young men they had seen before. It was like heaven and earth. Many noble ladies began to take the initiative after observing for a while. These people were very popular now. If they were late and someone else got to them first, they would have nowhere to cry. The atmosphere of noble banquets here was not bad. It was not like those in the south, where both male and female nobles were proud of having a lover. Many people saw having a lover as a reflection of charm. As long as the child was guaranteed to be produced by the husband, having a lover in secret was something that both parties tacitly agreed to. Of course, Sulen sternly refused to participate in these banquets. Guardian nights, masquerade balls, he had never heard of them. Of course, there were also some private rumors that His Majesty used to have a nickname in the south called Little White Dragon with the Silver Spear. According to Lady Elizabeth J. and other aristocratic ladies who did not want to reveal their names, this little white dragon with the silver spear used to be invincible, but she suddenly left 3 years ago. At that time, many people felt sorry for her. There was also a mayor of Kulin City who did not want to reveal his name. He said that the little white dragon with the silver spear went to the north and became a pioneer noble. Of course, Su Len said that these were purely rumors. He had never heard of the little white dragon with the silver spear. It's not me. I didn't. Don't talk nonsense. In addition to celebrating the victory of the rebellion, this noble banquet also provided an opportunity for the new nobles and the nobles who had previously sided with the king to interact. The banquet would last for 3 days. Today was just the beginning. Many noble ladies had just begun to look for targets. They gathered together and discussed clothes and jewelry in low voices. From time to time, they would take some desserts from exquisite porcelain plates. Next to them were 2 silver plates with snow-white sugar and salt for them to taste. The whole banquet was filled with a joyful atmosphere. Su Len and Marquis of Savoy were the most eye-catching people in this banquet. However, no one approached them except for the Queen and Marquis of Savoy's youngest daughter. Alex did not like this kind of environment and did not participate. Karina had already returned to the northern city. As the matriarch of the Drows, she still had a lot of things to do. During this period, Su Len had gradually begun to clean up the territories directly under the kingdom. The size of the embroidered uniform guards did not increase. These embroidered uniform guards were responsible for monitoring the world and the officials in various places. Then, they would send the results to the palace. Those who did not do anything were directly removed from their positions. Those who took bribes, broke the law, and plundered the land were arrested and imprisoned. After Sullen's rectification, the environment of the Kingdom of Florence was slowly changing. He had already formulated a set of city sanitation regulations that all cities in the Kingdom of Florence must abide by. It would not be long before the stinky, polluted, and stacked cities with feces would be brand new. Your Majesty, the Marquis has something to discuss with you. The eldest son of Marquis of Savoy said respectfully after Su Len had a simple conversation with the nobles. Go chat with the ladies. I'll go over there for a while, Su Len said to Phyllis and then left with Vader. What is it? Your Majesty, the Marquis has compiled an account of the spoils of war collected in this war. Your Majesty, please take a look, Vader said respectfully. Su Len nodded. His expression did not change. He was very satisfied with the Marquis of Savoy's actions. It was not difficult to capture the army. His original army had a system that allowed him to clearly know the loyalty of the army. However, the others did not have a system, so they relied more on wealth and goods. In this era, as long as the army had control over personnel and finances, they could basically control the army in their hands. Therefore, Savoy took the initiative to hand these things over to Su Len to express his attitude. In a room on the 2nd floor of the castle, the Marquis of Savoy handed the account book to Su Len for inspection. Although he had never learned how to keep accounts, he relied on his mathematical foundation in his previous life to check the account book. In fact, part of the rewards for the soldiers had already been distributed. The rest would be distributed after Su Len confirmed it. As for the rest of the rewards, it would be distributed by Su Len. After all, it was best to distribute the rewards personally. In his previous life, there was a saying that Su Len strongly agreed with. Only the name of the instrument could be used. What was the name of the instrument? The musical instruments, ornaments, and titles that represented the ruler's rank were the name of the instrument. In other words, the power and position could not be given to others. Things like awarding rewards could not be done by others. Thank you for your hard work. After checking the account book, Su Luen nodded with satisfaction. I'll give you another 10% as your reward. Thank you for your generosity, Your Majesty. Savoy said happily. Next, Savoy prepared a sumptuous banquet. Apart from the Marquis and his son, his youngest daughter, Xanthi, was also accompanying them. Sulen had met Xanthi once before. Today, she was wearing a beautiful low-cut noble lace dress. She had delicate makeup on and an exquisite diamond necklace around her elegant neck. With her fair skin and perky breasts, she looked absolutely stunning. "Your Majesty, thank you for your trust in me." Savoy came over to propose a toast. Sulen naturally would not refuse their toast. He raised his glass and downed it in one gulp. After the two drank one, Vader also came forward to make a toast. Then Sandy also came forward to make a toast to Su Luan. They were drinking the high-end rum produced in the northern town. Although this kind of rum tasted a little sweet, its alcohol content was not lower than that of vodka. Although it was drunk without feeling anything, it was easy to get drunk if one was not careful. Xanthi's alcohol tolerance was not good. After a few glasses of rum, her face turned red and her bright eyes became even more moist. Under the illumination of the light, she was mesmerizing. However, Sulen did not see it. He was currently dealing with Savoy and Vader's toasts. At this time, Sulen realized that something was not right. The two of them were drinking until their faces were red. They were still pulling Sulen to propose toasts. They were obviously trying to get him drunk. With Sulen's physique of over 50 points, his resistance to alcohol was very high. It was not easy to get him drunk. As for whether they had other motives, Sulen was not worried. Savoy's loyalty had always been 100%. He would not do anything to betray him. Therefore, Sulen decided to go with the flow and get drunk. P.S. To make up for yesterday. Chapter 484. Seeing that Sulen had finally passed out, the Marquis of Savoy and his son heaved a sigh of relief. If he hadn't passed out, they would have been the ones to pass out. Today, they had thoroughly experienced Sulen's alcohol tolerance. The two of them had already used magic potions to temporarily increase their physical fitness. Even so, they had almost passed out. The Marquis of Savoy sat down on a chair and heaved a heavy sigh of relief. "It's finally over. Hurry up and arrange for someone to send His Majesty over. Also, send your sister over." The Marquis of Savoy glanced at Xanthi, whose eyes were already hazy with drunkenness. Burp. Vader burped and shook his head. "Don't worry, Father. I've already arranged it." As he spoke, Vader stood up unsteadily. His arm groped around the cabinet at the side for a while. The originally seamless walls suddenly opened up to reveal a passageway. A few maids who had been waiting for a long time walked out from the passageway. "Be careful. Send His Majesty to the room upstairs. Also, send Miss Xanthi up too." Vader instructed everyone to start moving. The maids were all strong. 4 of them worked together to help Sulen up, while the other 2 supported the drunk Xanthi. With the help of another maid, Vader staggered all the way to a luxuriously decorated bedroom upstairs. He placed Sulen and Xanthi on the big bed. "Sister, it's all up to you this time. As your brother, I can only help you this much." After saying that, he patted Xanthi and left unsteadily. At the same time, he closed the door behind him. Vader shook his head, and then said to the maids, "All of you stay here tonight. Don't let anyone in to disturb His Majesty. Do you understand?" "Yes." The maids hurriedly lowered their heads and responded. "If things go wrong, you know the consequences. Of course, if everything goes well, you will receive a generous reward tomorrow and regain your freedom." After settling everything, Vader returned to report to the Marquis of Savoy. Of course, after the door was closed, Sulen slowly opened his eyes as he turned around and took a look at Sandy, who was lying beside him. At this moment, Sandy's beautiful face was very red. Due to being drunk, she was a bit confused. Her delicate facial features, white skin and delicate fragrance made Sulen's heart feel like being scratched by a kitten's paw. This Marquis of Savoy actually did such a thing. It's simply amazing. Since he delivered himself to my doorstep, I'll eat him. Eat it. Or should I eat it? Forget it. Since they are so enthusiastic, I really can't refuse them. Just accept them. Su Len quickly made a decision. What was the point of being pretentious at this time? Men were creatures that could never withstand tests. You don't believe me? If you don't believe me, you can send a beauty over and I'll show you. Now, the Marquis of Savoy was very clear about the consequences of getting two people drunk and then sending them to the same bed. As a legendary master, he was very clear about the physique of a legendary master. Even if they were drunk, they would at most wake up in 1 or 2 hours. When a hot-blooded young man and a young and beautiful girl who had no strength to resist appeared on the same bed, what would happen in the end? Let's not talk about it anymore. I just want to say that I understand what you know and I won't explain what you don't know. After all, it's fine as long as you know. As for the drunken sex, I can tell you seriously and responsibly that it's all bullshit. The premise of drunken sex is that he isn't drunk at all. Alcohol is just an excuse. If he was really drunk, he would have already become a pile of dead people. How could he have messed up sex? As one of the chosen Marquis of the Kingdom of Florence, the Marquis of Savoy was very clear that his current position was very dangerous. For the sake of the family's future, he personally directed today's matter. In Sullen's words, his path was broadened. At this point, Su Len naturally would not refuse, so the next morning, the Marquis of Savoy saw the energetic Su Len and the shy and limping Sandy. Then, the nobles of the entire Sanfilto city knew that Su Len had a new consort. When Su Len returned to the northern city from Sanfilto city, it was already the season when the snow and ice melted. During this period of time, he had been handling matters in Sanfilto city. With the large amount of information collected by the brocade guards, Su Len made some appointments and adjustments to the officials in various places. The first batch of students in the school in Sanfilto city had been trained. After 4 months of learning, these students were now beginning to be assigned to various places by Su Len to serve as grassroots officials. Of course, these people also had to go to prison to receive ideological education before they left. During this period of time, the brocade guards had been quietly expanding. Now, the brocade guards had been building strongholds in most of the cities in the north. At the same time, the construction of the Eagle's Nest had been closely followed by the brocade guards. An intelligence network that could cover the entire kingdom of Florence was gradually taking shape. Of course, the cost of building this intelligence network was also very high. A large sum of money was needed every month to build this network. This time, a large amount of money had just been obtained from the battlefield, and a considerable part of it had been invested in this. Walking out of the astrology platform, Su Len was about to go see the apprentices in the wizard tower. However, he was surprised to see Onyxvia and Hathaway walking out together. The two were still discussing what to eat tonight. A wizard who wanted to study dragons and make friends with a dragon? This seemed to be a bit wrong. After thinking for a while, Su Len asked Chrissy about the daily activities of the little red dragon during this period of time. Onyxvia was very obedient after coming to the wizard tower. She found that there were too many big bosses here. In the past, she had the guts to wait until she was strong enough to whip Su Len, but she quickly gave up this dangerous idea. Su Len was really too strong. He was an advanced legendary and also had a wizard tower. Even if she was an adult, she would still be far from being able to compete with Su Len. Only when she was an ancient dragon would she have the chance to compete with Su Len. However, the gap between a young dragon and an ancient dragon spanned several years, and the gap spanned thousands of years. If Su Len was still alive after such a long time, then how strong would he be? She lived until she was strong enough, but Su Len might have died of old age. Even if she was strong enough, she would not be able to take revenge. Therefore, after knowing the truth, Xianxia gave up. Then she returned to her daily life as a dragon. Every day, she slept on the Golden Mountain in the treasure room. When she had nothing to do, she would walk around the wizard tower or sneak into the kitchen to eat. Later, when Hathaway wanted to study dragons, she told her that as long as she learned spells, she could speed up her growth. Xianxia was tempted. Dragons were long-lived creatures, and they also hoped to become stronger. Therefore, Xianxia agreed to cooperate with Hathaway to do some experiments, and then Hathaway would teach her all kinds of spells. "Master, you're back." Seeing Sulen come over, the little red dragon's body stiffened, then it immediately recovered and said carefully, "Looks like you've had a good time." Sulen looked at the little red dragon and smiled. "Sulen, Phyllis didn't come back with you?" Hathaway glanced back and asked. "No, she's now the queen of the Kingdom of Florence. When I'm not around, she needs to be there." Sulen shook his head. "I see. I wanted to study the blood connection between dragon wizards and dragons," Hathaway said, a little disappointed. "Oh, did you find something new?" Sulen asked. Hathaway shook her head. "I have some ideas, but they're not mature yet. Isn't Phyllis's blood density a little low? I want to try to strengthen her a little. When she comes, you can talk to her. I think she'll agree." "Master, master." The little red dragon said hesitantly. Sulen looked at her and said, "What's wrong? I heard you built a volcano here. Can I move there?" The little red dragon said weakly. "Move to a volcano?" Sulen paused for a moment, then understood. Red dragons like to live in warm mountains. It would be even better if they lived in a volcanic environment. "If you live in a volcano, do I have to move my gold to the volcano and build a lava hot spring for you?" Sulen said, glancing at the little red dragon. "Really?" The little red dragon's eyes lit up. "Pa!" Sulen reached out and knocked the little red dragon's head, and then said angrily, "In your dreams. Lava hot spring? If there's lava, why don't I use it to make obsidian? Why make it a hot spring for you? I caught you to be my mount, not for you to enjoy." "Oh." The little red dragon hugged its head with both hands and said dejectedly. Seeing the little red dragon's expression, Sulen smiled and said, "Although you can't live in a volcano, it's not impossible to modify your environment. I can create a temperature array for the place where you live, and adjust the temperature there to be close to the temperature of the volcano." "Really? That's great!" Xianxia shouted happily. "Of course. When the time comes, I'll give you the remote control for the temperature control. You can choose to adjust the temperature as high or low as you want." Sulen smiled. He was very democratic when it came to this. "By the way, remember to collect the scales that you shed and don't throw them away." Sulen suddenly said, "Those scales are not very hard, but they're good for making dragon scale armor." Dragons and snakes were somewhat similar. Their scales would fade as they grew. Of course, sometimes in battle, their scales would be destroyed, but after a period of time, they would grow new scales. The scales shed when a dragon was young had low defense. Other than making some potions, they were not very valuable. The scales that were shed when a dragon was young were valuable. Chapter 485. The dragon scales shed by the giant dragons also had the power of the giant dragons. The giant dragons often rewarded their slaves with these scales. They used a spell to embed these dragon scales on their slaves, which could create some dragonkin kobolds, dragonkin orcs, and so on. There were still some differences between these dragonkin and the real dragonkin. The dragonkin transformed by embellishing scales on their bodies had low heritability, and their strength was also weaker. This kind of dragonkin transformation would improve the user's physical fitness in all aspects. Of course, this method consumed less energy, and the number of dragonkin that could be transformed was also higher. In fact, many dragonkin creatures were not the offspring of giant dragons and other creatures. Of course, a considerable number of dragonkin creatures that were almost all over the multiverse were indeed the descendants of giant dragons. The giant dragons had a special radiation ability around their bodies. This radiation was not destructive, but it could subtly dragonize other creatures. Living in this environment for a long time, the body would even show some dragonization reactions, such as growing some small scales like dragon scales, and so on. Sulan and Hathaway came to the treasury together and made a temperature control array for the little red dragon's sleeping place. At the same time, they strictly limited the area to ensure that it would not affect other places. The energy of this temperature control array was also provided by the elemental pool. Now the elemental pool of the entire wizard tower was still full of energy. The elemental pool that Hathaway originally designed could be used to upgrade the wizard tower into a floating space tower. Of course, this elemental pool could only maintain the floating space tower's flight for a period of time. To truly become a floating space tower, the elemental furnace technology was still needed. After making the temperature control array for Onyx Via, Sulan and Hathaway returned to the palace together. At this time, Alex also returned from the Eagle Fortress. During this period of time, she had been paying attention to her people. After this period of upgrading, several more harpies had successfully transformed into winged people. After seeing Alex, Sulan pulled Alex together. That night, Sulan stayed in the palace and gave Hathaway and Alex a checkup. So far, Hathaway's body had improved a little, but she was still no match for Sulan. During this time, her bloodline awakening was very stable. As her strength increased, her bloodline would awaken bit by bit. Although this bloodline power gave her great power, it was also a kind of restraint. Luckily, she was a wizard. When the bloodline potential was exhausted, she could still rely on the power of a wizard to continue to increase her strength. Among Sullen's wives, the most powerful one was Hathaway, followed by the little succubus Chris and Alex. Their strength was about the same, followed by Phyllis. As for Sandy, she was just an ordinary person. In fact, even Phyllis was just an ordinary person before. She only became a warlock because of Sullen's dragon blood potion. However, compared to Alex, Phyllis's bloodline potential was far inferior. Phyllis had only implanted a small amount of bloodline, so her awakening and potential were much lower. However, she was much stronger than before. When they were in San Filto City, Sulan would take Phyllis to do exercises every night to improve her physical fitness and speed up her awakening. After this period of consistent exercise, Phyllis's physical fitness had been greatly improved. This was something that Sulan had personally verified. What the dragon bloodline brought to her was not only the improvement of her physical fitness, but also the ability to protect herself. With the advantage of her physical fitness and sullen swordsmanship, Phyllis could easily defeat many warriors. The thrilling battle was over, and a new day had begun. Sulan was drawing a blueprint at his desk. The terrain of the northern city was troublesome, so he was thinking about the layout of the floating city in the future. Although the floating city was built with the northern city as the core, it was impossible to raise the entire city into the sky. After the northern city had been expanded several times, the outer city wall was 8 kilometers long. Coupled with the surrounding farmland, the area had reached dozens of square kilometers. Such an area could be regarded as a medium-sized floating city. Sullen's current planned area was only part of the city. After the separation in the future, a huge pit would be formed in the inner city of the northern city. He was ready to renovate it. If the elemental furnace was built successfully, it would not be too difficult to raise a small floating city. In the era of the Arcane Empire, the area of a large floating city was more than 50 square kilometers. That kind of large floating city used several mice energy nuclei arranged in a special way to form an energy matrix, and then the behemoth was raised. Sulen naturally did not have such powerful technology. To build such a large floating city, Sulen had to go one step further after mastering the elemental fusion furnace and obtain the elemental annihilation furnace. Elemental annihilation was a technology that not many people in the era of the Arcane Empire knew about. It was said that this technology had not been developed and was still a conjecture. Of course, no one knew the specific situation now. However, Sulen did not have any information about the elemental annihilation technology, so it was impossible to talk about it. There was a light sound of footsteps, and then the door of the study opened. Chris's figure appeared in the room. She was wearing a black bodysuit with hollowed-out patterns today, showing off her curves incisively and vividly. The figure of a succubus was very exaggerated. Her breasts were high, her hips were round, and her waist was slender. It was a perfect figure, and because of her race, the body of a succubus was very soft. This flexibility was far beyond that of humans, so they could easily perform many positions that humans could not. At the same time, they could also use some offensive methods that humans could not use in battle. Sulen had prepared a large number of materials for Chris and asked Hathaway to make equipment for her. The black leather coat she was wearing now was one of them. He had made a total of 5 of these coats using the toughest and softest leather from Hydra. According to standards, they were high-grade magic items and were only a little bit away from being Tier 4 magic items. These leather armors were very soft and did not affect Chris's agility at all. Moreover, their defense was very good. Sulen had accumulated a large number of materials and asked Hathaway to make them. Many of the equipment Sulen and the others were using were made by her. Master. Chris was like a beautiful snake as she wrapped herself around Sulen. Did you miss me? Slap. Sulen slapped Chris's perky butt, which was like a full moon. The sound was crisp and pleasant. Her butt shook slightly, and the elasticity was very good. Behave, now again. I'll deal with you tonight. A small flame rose in Sulen's heart, but he forced it down. Chris pouted and pressed his head hard against her body, letting him have a taste of suffocation. Only then did she get up. Master, is there something you need from me? I've prepared new equipment for you. Sulen took a deep breath. The suffocating feeling just now was too strong. New equipment? For me? Chris's eyes lit up at the mention of new equipment. Of course it's for you. Sulen rubbed her head. Let's go. Soon, Sulen brought Chris to a room. There were many stone platforms in this room. These platforms had been sealed by magic barriers, and pieces of equipment were floating on the platforms. Sulen took her to a stone platform and gently inputted a magic password on the stone platform. The protective barrier on the surface of the stone platform disappeared, and a piece of equipment appeared in front of them. This weapon is called Poison Fang. It's the strongest and sharpest tooth I took from the Hydra's head when I killed it last time. It has armor-piercing, anti-magic, sharpness, poison, and paralysis effects. Try it and see how it works. Sulen took the dagger and handed it to Chris. Other than using a whip, Chris also used a dagger. Her dagger energy was very strong. Chris grabbed the dagger with one hand and did all kinds of fancy things with the other. She was very familiar with the dagger. Very good. That's good. Hathaway turned around and took a delicately made belt. This is the Giant's Belt of Strength. After wearing it, your strength will increase greatly. You need to get used to it in advance. Hathaway made 2 Giant's Belt of Strength. They were made from the body materials of the Frost Giant Chief and the Swamp Giant Chief. The 2 Giant's Belt of Strength were basically the same. The only difference was the color of the belt. The Frost Giant's belt was blue, and the Swamp Giant's belt was yellow. This kind of Giant's Belt of Strength had very few uses. Its purpose was to increase strength. It could give the wearer the strength of a Frost Giant or a Swamp Giant. The best belt of strength in the material plane was the Frost Giant King's belt. It was said to be made from the skin of a Frost Giant King. It could increase the wearer's strength by 8, and the highest was 35. The two belts made by Hathaway could increase the wearer's strength by 4, and the highest was 30. There were restrictions on relying on external forces to increase the body's attributes. For example, attributes added by equipment, such as strength, could not be stacked and had a limit. The second kind was the increase in strength from spells. At the same time, the attributes added by spells could not be stacked and would be covered. The third kind was the eruption of the body's potential. The most common was Berserk. The attributes in these three states could be stacked. Chris took the belt and put it on. As she put it on, her whole body immediately surged with a heat full of power. Chapter 486. How do you feel? Sulen asked with a smile. My body is full of power. I think I can punch through the wall here. Chrissy said eagerly. Do you want to give it a try? Sulen said, looking at Chrissy with a teasing smile. However, Chrissy didn't notice at all. She nodded and agreed. Su Luan took Chrissy to the training ground of the Wizard Tower, and then the two stood in the middle of the training ground. Chrissy was a warlock and a part-time assassin. As soon as she stood still, she attacked. With a flash of cold light, a dagger appeared in front of Su Luan. Su Luan blocked it with his long sword. Although he was not an assassin, Su Luan's agility attribute was much higher than Chrissy's. The battle between the two was very fast. In the eyes of others, there were afterimages quickly appearing on the battlefield, and only when they collided did sparks burst out. Chris surrounded Su Luan and kept attacking. Every attack she made was aimed at Su Luan's fatal points, which made people tremble with fear. Bang! Sulen blocked Chrissy's attack again. The cold light on the dagger was less than a centimeter away from Sulen's throat. However, a huge force came from the dagger, and Chrissy's body flew backward at an even faster speed. She then smashed into the wall beside her. Ouch! It hurts. I'm done, I'm done. Chris said as she rubbed her aching back. I'm an assassin, but my dexterity isn't as high as yours. Moreover, your strength is more than one level lower. Why should I torture myself? Chrissy sat on the ground with a depressed expression. Sulen smiled and walked over to help her up. Now that you have the strength belt, your strength has reached the standard of an ordinary frost giant. You're much stronger than other assassins, Sulen said with a smile. The best strength belt was made from the skin of a frost giant king or a cloud giant king. It allowed the wearer to have the strength of a frost giant chieftain. I've also prepared other equipment for you. More equipment? Hearing Sulen's words, Chris's eyes lit up. She grabbed Sulen's hand and got up from the ground. Let me see what kind of equipment it is. Let's go. Sulen pulled Chris back to the lab. This is a mind headdress. It can add a mind shield to prevent you from being controlled by mind control spells. Prerequisites: will immunity, immunity to some mind control spells and mind attack spells. Sulen handed a beautiful gemstone headband to Chris. The gemstones used in the headband were actually the eyes of the brain hunters. The brain hunter's eyes had the same special psionic ability as the beholder. After soaking in a specially concocted potion, the brain hunter's eyes would become very hard, as beautiful as the best cat's eye gems. Gale Boots. It comes with advanced haste, fly, featherfall, and auto-recharge. You should be able to use it. The Gale Boots were made of cryopterous leather. The wind element on it was rich, and with the runes inscribed with mithril, it was already a quasi-legendary level magic equipment. Agility Gem. It can strengthen your agility perception. It will be effective as long as you wear it. Sulen handed a gem to Chris. In addition to the agility gem, Hathaway also made strength gems, physique gems, mind gems, and charm gems. These gems required high-quality magic gems as the main material, and many rare materials were added. Only one of these gems could be worn at a time, and the effect was not bad. It could increase the corresponding attributes by 3 points. These attribute gems could only be worn one at a time, and the attributes increased by the gem could be stacked with other equipment. If you wanted to change it, you would have to take it off and exchange it. In fact, these attribute gems were only the primary products of another type of gem, the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone, this gem required 5 high-quality attribute gems and other materials to synthesize. After success, you would get a Philosopher's Stone. The success rate of the Philosopher's Stone was very low, but after success, the Philosopher's Stone would increase all attributes by 3 points. It was a pity that Hathaway hadn't made it yet. Shadow Cloak, with a high-level invisibility spell. It can strengthen stealth and shadow at the same time. It can summon a mirror image. The mirror image is exactly the same as the original, but the damage is only 1/5 of the original. The mirror image's defense is also 1/5 of the original. It was a very good cannon fodder to attract the enemy's attention or to cover an attack or retreat. If used well, it was not difficult to change the outcome of a battle. Protection Ring, this is made based on the ring I used to wear. After activation, a high-level energy protection force field will appear. Anti-Magic Ring. After wearing it, it can increase magic resistance. It is very valuable against wizards. Beside him, Chris was dazzled, her face full of shock. This set of equipment was simply too luxurious. Any one of these equipment in front of her would be sold for hundreds of thousands or even millions of kinnar. With so many of them added up, it was a few million kinnar. Chris had become a moving treasure trove. The main materials for these equipment were obtained by Su Len from killing various monsters and monsters. After Hathaway's crafting, they became powerful magic equipment. As a member of the Chinese family in his previous life, Su Len had also inherited the fine traditions of the Chinese family. For example, he was obsessed with the construction of cities, roads, and other infrastructures. For example, Su Len was like a squirrel in winter, hoarding large amounts of wealth. These things in front of her were accumulated bit by bit. When he was playing games, Su Len liked to accumulate large amounts of materials and gems. Then he would upgrade his equipment every once in a while. After giving all the equipment to Chris, Su Len went to find Alex. Alex was flipping through books in the library. When he saw Su Len coming, he put down the book and said, "How come you have time to come here today?" Su Len stepped forward and grabbed Alex's arm. "Come with me, I have something for you." Su Len pulled Alex to the lab. In the lab, as soon as Alex entered, he was attracted by a luxurious mage robe. The appearance of the equipment made by Hathaway was basically designed by Su Len. Su Len combined the various patterns he had seen in his previous life. After some deletions or direct plagiarism, the pattern was much better than the original pattern in this world. Of course, some impractical patterns were also deleted by Su Len. This is the Starry Sky robe. The main material is the skin of the Hydra. It's made from the softest skin of the Hydra's abdomen. The gold and silver threads on it are made from adamantine and mithril. Although the skin of the Hydra's abdomen is not as tough as the other parts, it's still tougher than normal fur. The softness is also very suitable. It's a good material for inner armor or wizard robes. The wizard robe in front of Alex was in the style of a windbreaker. It was very luxurious, and the tall Alex looked very beautiful in it. Is it beautiful? It's so beautiful. Alex stared at the wizard robe in front of him without blinking. Try it on. Su Len smiled. Okay. Alex did not refuse. He stepped forward and put on the wizard robe. This wizard robe is called the Starry Sky robe. It comes with spell maximization, and mana reconstruction, metamagic abilities. At the same time, it can greatly increase your mana recovery speed. Magic resistance is 25. There are also advanced chain of accidents and spell sequences on it. It can increase the casting speed, reduce the casting difficulty, and shorten the casting time. Many spells that would take you a second or 2 to 3 seconds to cast will take a lot less time with this Starry Sky magic robe. Some spells can even be cast instantly. Chain of accidents and spell sequences will need to be input and set by you. When the time comes, you just need to prepare according to your fighting style. The wizard robe also comes with flash spells, advanced invisibility spells, flight spells, advanced mage armor, and advanced energy defensive force field. There's also the life-saving spell, Banish. Banish was a spell that did not have any attacking power. The only use of this spell was to instantly send an object into a different dimension. In this different dimension, the object would not be able to move, and at the same time, it would not be able to be attacked. It would only come out of the different dimension when the time came. This banish was very similar to the Time Dragon's Time Banish. It was said that this spell was made to imitate the Time Dragon's Time Banish. Time Banish, the Time Dragon's innate ability. It can directly throw the enemy out of time. The creature will completely disappear and be unable to move. Of course, others will not be able to attack it until its existence is recaptured by time. In other words, it will appear in the near future. During this process, the existence of the opponent can be said to have completely disappeared. During this time, everything about the subject will be stopped, and even their thoughts will be stagnant. Of course, Banish was not so powerful. It could only send the person into a different dimension for a period of time. It would not stop their thoughts. The duration was 30 seconds. It could be used to escape or trap the enemy. What do you think? That's great. Alex said happily. The robe is beautiful. The spells on it are also great. As long as you like it. Sulen shrugged. Here's something for you. Look at this staff. Sulen took out a staff. Su Luan had used a branch of a nature oak tree for this staff, and had carved a large number of magic patterns on it. This staff could store a level 8 spell, a level 7 spell, and 2 level 6 spells. At the same time, it could reduce the casting difficulty and mana consumption. It was blessed with the metamagic ability, Spell Penetration. Chapter 487. Sulen was busy preparing equipment for Chris and Alex to enhance their strength, and Hathaway was no exception. Compared to Chris and Alex's equipment, Hathaway's equipment was more powerful. Alex's Starry Sky robe was actually a simplified version of Hathaway's Sage Robe of Wisdom. Not only did it have all the power of the Starry Sky robe, but it also had many supreme magic skills that were at the legend level. As for the magic staff, the nature oak was now in its growth stage, and its branches could not be used to make legendary magic staffs. Originally, the Hydra's spine could be used to make legendary magic staffs, but this kind of spine material was more suitable for necromancy and voodoo spells. It was not suitable for Hathaway's prophecy, incantation, and evocation spells. Ordinary magic staffs had almost no effect on Hathaway. Hathaway's magic staff was still the one she made before, and its effect on her could only be said to be better than nothing. Northern Wilderness, Ruins Valley, Kobold Camp. Under Sullen's deliberate indulgence, this kobold camp already had more than 2,000 kobolds and goblins. These monsters were now all believers of the evil god of the Heartless. After more than half a year of development, this place had become the evil god of the Heartless headquarters. This fruit had now matured, and Sulen was ready to harvest it. The ice and snow had melted, and Sulen set off with an army from the northern battlefront city, accompanied by Chris and Alex. As for Hathaway, she still stayed in the wizard tower to cooperate with them. These slender rogues quickly disappeared in front of people's eyes. "Sir, there are no enemies. We have arrived at the predetermined location. Hide here. From now on, you can only enter and not leave," Su Len said coldly. Ever since the kobolds were allowed to live in the valley, Su Len had never relaxed his surveillance of them. A large number of harpies were keeping a close eye on the valley. Because of the arrival of winter, all the kobolds who were out had returned to the valley to spend the winter. The valley was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, and there was only one exit. The mountains blocked the cold wind, so the winter here wasn't too cold. Moreover, there was a spring in the valley, and there was land for farming. It could be said that as long as the entrance was sealed, it would be a paradise. Of course, the space in this valley was limited. It could only accommodate 2,000 to 3,000 people at most. Su Len came to the outskirts of the valley and looked at the kobolds who were preparing for the ritual. He didn't bring a lot of soldiers with him this time. There were only 300 of them, but they weren't weak at all. There were 100 half-elf archers, 100 barbarian warriors, and 100 spear guards. After 3 years of development, Sullen's current guards had already been replaced by the formation breaker. The number of people in the formation breaker had officially broken through 50, and the shooting sound battalion was not inferior, reaching 40 people. These guards weren't here to protect Su Len, but to protect the palace. The valley below was already occupied by the kobolds. After a few months of development, these kobolds had built all kinds of defenses here. Although the normal kobolds weren't very intelligent, the kobold warlocks were still very intelligent. At least, they weren't worse than normal people. After seeing this kobold tribe, Su Len was surprised to find that there were at least 12 kobold warlocks in this tribe. It must be known that in the northern wilderness, only one kobold warlock could awaken in a kobold tribe with over 1,000 people. In this kobold tribe with only 2,000 people, there were 12 spellcasters. This probability was higher than the human world. In addition to the kobold warlocks, there were at least 3 teams of dragon blood kobolds. One team had 36 kobolds, and 3 teams had 108 kobolds. A village of this size could be considered a medium-sized tribe in the northern wilderness. The equipment of these kobolds was somewhat crude. They wore dirty leather armor and held metal weapons in their hands. Kobolds knew how to smelt metal, but due to technical problems, the metal they smelted had a lot of impurities, and the weapons they made were much worse. Su Len was very clear that this was definitely the work of the evil god. Normal kobolds were classified as level 1, but their strength didn't reach level 1. According to the system's rating, a farmer with simple training was only level 1. Such a farmer only needed to be calm and collected to deal with 3 kobolds. The dragon blood kobold strength wasn't something normal kobolds could compare to. The profession level of a dragon blood kobold was level 7. This was already stronger than a knight. As for the kobold warlocks, their strength was at least level 2. Most kobold warlocks had mastered the fireball spell. This spell wasn't trash, but in fact, the destructive power of the fireball spell was very strong. This spell was basically comparable to the power of a small caliber cannon. In the valley in front of them, the kobolds used trees, rocks, and mud to build a crude wall to seal off the entrance of the valley. There was also a team of kobold guards on the wall. In the valley, there was a messy village. A stream flowed outside the village, and there were some cultivated farmlands nearby. However, the farming techniques were terrible, and the farmlands looked more like graffiti. However, in terms of civilization, the kobold village in front of them was much more advanced than the kobolds in the northern wilderness. The kobolds here looked like they were living in a slave society. Rough mud walls were erected around the village. They were nearly half a meter thick and were made of stones and mud. Behind the mud walls were low thatched huts and mud enclosures. There were also many slaves working outside the village. If it wasn't for the fact that it looked too simple and crude, this was completely a town. They're learning really fast. Seeing the scene in the valley, Su Len couldn't help but sigh. These kobolds and goblins that escaped from the northern city might have only learned a little, but under the power of the evil god, they started to develop a civilization. Since when did the evil god start to develop believers? Or was he preparing to transform into a true god? Although Su Len didn't know what the evil god was planning, he could tell that he was planning something big. Woo woo woo. A low bugle horn sounded from the village, followed by a series of noisy shouts. Accompanied by the kobold's clumsy draconic language, it sounded like thousands of dogs barking at the same time. It was very irritating to listen to. In the center of the village, a group of priests wearing strange masks stood on an altar. The stones on the altar were a strange dark red, as if they were soaked in blood. The kobolds around them looked very fanatical, and there was a kind of sick madness in their eyes. Then, under the escort of a team of strong dragon blood kobold warriors, a group of captives was dragged out. What surprised Su Len was that there were not only goblins and kobolds among the captives, but also jackalans and orcs. These slaves were covered in ugly scars, and their eyes were numb. There was no sign of life. Woof. Woof woof. A series of broken dragon language sounded. It was the kobold priests praising the evil god. When the leading priest raised his hand, the noisy scene instantly quieted down. Then, there was another shout. The black mass of people all knelt on the ground, and then started to chant under the guidance of the priest. The entire ritual site was in a frenzy. The kobolds and goblins' eyes were all red as they screamed hysterically. Their loud voices reverberated throughout the valley, and the birds and beasts in the surrounding forest were also frightened by this sound. Woof woof. A cruel smile appeared on the leading kobold priest's face. He held an obsidian dagger in his hand and came to the first captive. With a flash of cold light, the sharp dagger directly pierced the captive's chest. The captive opened his eyes wide and wanted to struggle, but he was held down by the dragon blood kobold next to him. The priest did not stop. Instead, he cut horizontally with the dagger, opening a large hole in the captive's chest. Blood gushed out, and a bright red beating heart appeared in front of him. The kobold priest grabbed the beating heart, and the obsidian dagger in his hand flashed with cold light, and he instantly cut it off. Hot blood gushed out of the captive's veins, but the kobold priest did not care. The blood flowed along the rocks and onto the altar. The priest held the heart in one hand and the dagger in the other, and he walked to the center of the altar with a very sincere expression. He then carefully placed the heart on the dark red stone platform. As the blood flowed out, a strange evil energy also appeared. The kobold believers all had frenzied, intoxicated, and excited expressions on their faces. Su Luen quietly watched the group of kobolds perform the blood sacrifice. Obviously, these dogs couldn't change their habit of eating shit. The evil god of the Heartless still liked blood sacrifices. After all, blood sacrifices were the easiest way to obtain divine power. Otherwise, in ancient times, almost all the gods would have accepted the blood sacrifice. However, this blood sacrifice had a lot of side effects, which made the gods fearful. In the end, they had to give up on this ritual. Otherwise, this method of sacrifice would not have been abandoned. Relying on the conscience of the gods? In the past, many true gods went crazy because of blood sacrifices. They attacked everywhere and were eventually surrounded and killed by other gods. In the end, the gods gave up on this ritual. Looking at the dark red bloodstains on the altar, this kind of sacrificial ceremony had been held countless times. In fact, this kind of blood sacrifice was not conducive to the development of believers. Although the normal development of believers seemed to take a long time and the effect was slow, this kind of method was sustainable. In the long run, this kind of method was far more beneficial than blood sacrifice. Chapter 488. The specialty of a blood sacrifice was that it took only a short time and had a quick effect. The gods naturally liked this method. As for the other method that had a better long-term effect, they could not see that far ahead. Don't overestimate the knowledge of the gods. In fact, most of the gods were short-sighted. Soon, the second captive was dragged out. A blood sacrifice was not enough to satisfy the evil god. In ancient times, there were often blood sacrifices of thousands of people. There were even a few blood sacrifices of tens of thousands of people. As an evil god, the heartless would not be satisfied so easily. As time passed, the scale of the blood sacrifice would only increase. One day, the believers would not be able to bear it. If the blood sacrifice could not provide powerful sacrifices, then they would have to rely on sufficient numbers to please the evil god. Therefore, a blood sacrifice would often last for a long time. Through this blood sacrifice, the believers would be able to obtain the god's blessing. The quality of the sacrifices provided by the kobolds was not high, so they could only rely on numbers to make up for it. The sun gradually set, and the light in the valley became even dimmer. Pine oil torches were lit, and the priests began to dig out the hearts of the captives. Soon, all the captives were killed, but the evil god seemed to be dissatisfied with the sacrifices. The entire altar was shrouded in an eerie and terrifying aura. The invisible pressure made the kobolds tremble. The evil god was not an obedient child. If they could not satisfy the evil god's request, the evil god would do it himself. A cold glint flashed across the eyes of the leading priest. He then ordered in a deep voice. A few strong dragon-blooded kobolds rushed to the back of the crowd and grabbed some disabled kobolds and goblins. The captured kobolds and goblins screamed in horror and tried to escape, but everyone lowered their heads and ignored them. As the obsidian dagger slashed across, a kobold's chest was directly torn apart. His steaming heart was dug out. Scarlet blood spurted out and slowly flowed into the crevices of the rocks on the altar. As the heart was placed on the altar, the evil god's consciousness showed a trace of satisfaction. Then, it kept urging the sacrifice to continue. Seeing this, the kobold priest inwardly let out a sigh of relief before killing the other kobold. At the same time, the faces of the kobolds and gnomes kneeling before the altar were once again filled with fervent excitement. The kobold priest could feel the power within his body growing, and his heart was filled with joy. After every blood sacrifice, his strength would increase. This was a gift from the gods, and as long as he continued to sacrifice, he would become even more powerful. Above the altar, a blood-red spirit light enveloped the entire valley. This spirit light was emitted by the evil god. At this time, the sacrifice had reached its climax. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. Even Sulen could smell it in the air. "Do it," Sulen ordered coldly. "Alex, have the harpies seal off the battlefield. Don't let any living creature escape." "Yes, master." Alex gently flapped her wings, and a wave of energy spread out from her body. Soon, 3,000 harpies descended from the sky and surrounded the valley. "Chris, don't leave anyone alive in this battle." "Yes, master." The little succubus Chris's tall figure stepped forward and responded. Then, a group of demons behind her spread their wings and flew towards the valley in a flash. The northern battlefront city's army, which had already been prepared, began to move. Arrows rained down from the earth walls at the entrance of the valley. The kobolds patrolling the area were shot into hedgehogs before they could even react. The leading kobold with dragon blood was the focus of attention. At least 20 arrows pierced through its 2-meter-tall body. Blood flowed everywhere, and this kobold with dragon blood fell to the ground dead before he could even make a sound. The barbarian warriors covered in armor all roared and charged forward with their giant axes. These barbarians directly activated charge and rushed towards the earth walls at the entrance of the valley like tanks. Then, they jumped and smashed through the gate. The stronger ones even smashed through the walls made of stone, wood, and clay. The first line of defense built by the kobolds only lasted for a minute before it was completely destroyed. Frantic shouts came from the valley, and the sound of the collision startled the kobolds who were in the middle of the sacrificial ritual. The evil god Heartless also sensed something, and it roared furiously. Then, all the kobolds turned their heads to look. In the next second, the kobolds also roared furiously, grabbed their weapons, and rushed toward the entrance of the valley. Pang pang pang. As the sound of bowstrings rang out, sharp arrows fell from the sky, instantly pinning the charging kobold gnomes to the ground. Blood flowed everywhere. Spinning slash. Blood and flesh flew everywhere, and colorful organs fell everywhere. The blood made the barbarian warriors even more excited. Many of the barbarian warriors' eyes were bloodshot, and they directly activated Berserk. Their already tall bodies grew even taller, and the axes in their hands were like wheat being reaped. They killed all the kobolds and goblins that rushed up. Teams of spear guards followed closely behind. These spear guards wore fine iron armor and held spears in their hands. They lined up in a neat formation and pushed forward uniformly. After the kobolds and goblins collided with the spear guards, it was like a tide crashing into a reef. Bright red blood splashed like waves, and the enemies were directly stabbed to death in front of the spear formation. Lightning spear. A bolt of lightning appeared in Sullen's hand, and then a bright bolt of lightning was thrown out by Sulen. The lightning instantly hit the kobold priest on the altar. The powerful lightning power instantly hit the priest's chest, and a bowl-sized hole appeared in his chest. The powerful lightning power turned the area around the wound into a pile of charcoal. These kobold wizards were also priests, so who knew if they had some strange spells? So Sulen took care of these people first. Lightning flashed, and then a few more bolts of lightning shot out. The dozen priests around the altar were just about to attack, but they were all covered by the lightning. A series of crackling sounds came, and these kobold priests were directly turned into piles of charcoal. Their corpses fell down one by one, and blood kept flowing out. The blood then seeped into the altar. There were sounds of killing all around, and kobolds and goblins were killed one after another. Because Sulen gave the order to kill, these people did not plan to take any prisoners. Everywhere they went, there was a rain of blood. Blood sprayed on the ground, and then slowly flowed under the influence of a strange power. The blood slowly gathered towards the altar as if it had a life of its own. Fortunately, the battlefield was in chaos, and no one noticed this problem. Hundreds and thousands of people died, and a large amount of blood gathered. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood. Nimble half-elven archers nimbly jumped onto the roofs and shot at the enemies. Quick, take the high ground. Archers, focus on suppressing the enemies. Break their formation, don't give them a chance to regroup. Waves of shouts sounded, and arrows rained down. The kobolds that were just about to gather into a formation were once again heavily injured. The half-elven archers shot very quickly. One of the older half-elves held 6 arrows in one hand, and in a short 2 seconds, he shot out 7 or 8 arrows in one breath. The kobolds that he aimed at fell one by one. One of the dragon-blood dog-headed men roared and grabbed a heavy metal shield and charged forward, wanting to get close to the archers. This powerful dragon-blood kobold was very fast. The archers immediately focused their fire on it. However, this dragon-blood kobold's reaction was very fast, and the shield in its hand was very large. It easily blocked those arrows. With the protection of the other kobolds, this dragon-blood kobold was very fast. Seeing that it was less than 10 meters away from the archers, the older half-elven archer's eyes narrowed, and his gaze became as sharp as an eagle's. Then, a scorching energy shot out from his bow. Flame arrow. Boom! The flame arrow was like a cannonball that flew over in an instant, and then directly hit the dragon-blood kobold. The shield in the kobold's hand was instantly blown to pieces, and the high temperature directly melted the metal shield. The kobold hiding behind the shield was directly blown away, and his entire body turned into a ball of fire. After the death of this kobold, the morale of the kobolds in the surroundings collapsed, and they turned to run. The battlefield was completely one-sided, and the kobolds and goblins suffered heavy casualties. Large amounts of blood gathered on the altar, and the evil energy on the altar became stronger and stronger. Now that the battle had reached this stage, the kobolds had long since collapsed. Many kobolds wanted to surrender, but they were immediately killed. Seeing this, the remaining kobolds started to run. However, there was only one exit in the valley, and they had nowhere to run. As the kobolds suffered heavy casualties, the evil energy quickly grew, and an evil spirit chi spread out from the altar. The evil spirit chi swept out, and in Sullen's eyes, the souls of the kobolds that had been killed were sucked in, and a shocking power quickly gathered. A powerful energy fluctuation appeared, and this energy tore through space, and a black shadow forcibly squeezed in. As the black shadow appeared, the blood on the altar instantly fused into the black shadow's body. Chapter 489. Boom! Soul energy surged, and a large amount of blood gathered. The original altar suddenly shattered, and a tall figure appeared there. Everyone, retreat to the exit of the valley immediately. Sulen immediately said after seeing the bloody figure. The next battle is no longer something you can interfere with. At this time, Sulen had already descended from mid-air. Lightning flashed on his body, and the storm halberd appeared in his hand. Powerful lightning power filled the air, and lightning snakes flashed through the air. Thunderstorm skill. The dazzling lightning cut through the night sky, and a bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket fell from the sky, instantly hitting the bloody figure that was constantly churning. Blood splattered, and lightning shot in all directions. A large amount of blood evaporated, and a 3-meter-tall figure appeared in front of them. "You deserve to die." A roar was heard, followed by a powerful evil energy that instantly burst out. Sulen felt his body sink. Ding, affected by blasphemy power, ding, affected by evil spirit energy, lightning surged, and Sullen's body was shrouded in a layer of lightning energy. Then, a powerful lightning power erupted from Sullen's body. Thunder domain. Endless lightning appeared in Sullen's eyes. At this time, Sulen was like the incarnation of lightning. Seeing the blood-red figure in front of him, Suluan didn't have to guess to know that it was the evil god known as the Heartless. Although it wasn't his real body, he had already injected most of his power into this incarnation. Gods were afraid of death, and very few gods would take the initiative to leave their divine kingdom with their true body. This evil god in front of him had put in a lot of effort this time. Although it was not his true body, the incarnation was not an ordinary incarnation. If this incarnation died, the evil god's strength would plummet, and he would suffer heavy losses. Seeing this incarnation, Sulen was not too surprised. After all, he had already prepared for this situation. As an evil god, although not a true god, his combat power was far beyond that of a legendary expert. Sulen speculated that this evil god's true body was much stronger than a demigod. The incarnation in front of him was also not to be underestimated. Lightning Spear. After activating the Thunder territory, the thunder power around Sulen became even stronger. A thunder spear filled with a destructive aura quickly formed in his hand. Sulen immediately threw out a lightning spear. However, Sullen's target wasn't the evil god's divine incarnation but the spatial portal that had been torn open. Amidst the thunderous roar, the heartless divine incarnation looked strangely at the collapsing portal. The lightning exploded, and even the altar below was destroyed by the lightning spear. Suluan wasn't going to leave the teleportation gate behind. What if this divine avatar escaped through the teleportation gate? Sui Xiong did not want to give up on the incarnation at the last moment and escape with the power of divinity. If that was the case, then all his efforts would be for naught. An angry roar sounded. Sulan directly destroyed the portal. The evil god's incarnation could not return unless he accumulated power again and started a new round of blood sacrifice. The wind raged. The angry evil god's incarnation was very fast. With a flash of red light, it had already appeared in front of Sulan. A blood tentacle instantly shot out. Sulan's storm battle halberd swept across and directly cut off the blood tentacle. However, something unexpected happened. The blood tentacle that was cut off quickly moved toward the main body and then merged back together. Regeneration? Or other abilities? Sulan frowned slightly. Or immunity to physical damage? Lightning spear. The storm battle halberd was instantly wrapped in a layer of violent thunder power. With Sulan's attack, thunder and lightning clashed in the sky. Boom! The moment the two sides clashed, an extremely fierce battle broke out. Horrifying scars appeared on the evil god's incarnation's huge body, and the energy shield on the surface of Sulan's body shattered one after another. The evil god's incarnation's attack directly hit Sulan's body, but he blocked it with his spear. Thunder and blood made a fierce explosion, and the two were directly pushed away by the explosion. Revenge! 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 I'm going to eat you! The evil god's incarnation muttered. Sulan's ears were shrouded in chaos. Whispers kept ringing in his ears. These noisy voices seemed to ignore space and appeared directly in his mind, constantly disturbing his mind. Sulan frowned. He hated this kind of enemy. Not only was their vitality tenacious, but they were also very difficult to kill. They were either immune to physical damage or had super strong regenerative abilities. Blasphemy! In a strange silence, an inexplicable figure appeared and pierced Sulan's soul. Unfortunately, this kind of attack was useless. Sulan had a strong will to begin with, and he also had the iron will talent ability. His own resistance was also high, and he was not afraid of this kind of control spell at all. Great Cleave. The evil god's follower rushed directly toward Sulan, and the evil energy kept corroding the surrounding space. Rumble. After realizing that magical attacks were useless against him, the evil god's incarnation directly used physical attacks. A giant sword condensed from flesh appeared in its hand. Sulan's body flashed and flew past from the side. Accompanied by the flash of thunder, Sulan's storm battle halberd fiercely cut a hideous wound on his body. A blood whip swept across. The blood whip had strong corrosive properties, and a layer of the rocks next to it was directly corroded. In a short while, the surrounding ground and rocks were full of traces of corrosion. There was also a layer of divine force field around the evil god's incarnation. Sulan was very clear about this and had already prepared for it. The storm battle halberd flashed with thunder and attacked quickly. The evil god's incarnation did not show any weakness. It fought speed with speed, and the whip shadows covered the surroundings tightly. The sky was filled with whip shadows that fell from the sky. Bang! 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 Sulan swept the evil god's incarnation away. Then, without any hesitation, he instantly chased after it. Chain Fireball. Spell Maximization. Flames rose up, and the evil god's incarnation was beaten to a pulp. Sulan did not stop at all. Fireball after fireball whizzed out. In the deafening explosion, the evil god's incarnation in front of him became smaller and smaller, and the energy layer on the surface of its body became shaky. The evil god's incarnation was originally an amalgamation of chaotic evil power. Later on, it received a large number of blood sacrifices, and its consciousness became even more chaotic and crazy. In the face of Sullen's attacks, it did not dodge at all. It directly rushed forward. With a flash of blood, it was already in front of Su Len. A scarlet shadow instantly attacked. Bang! Thunder exploded. Tentacles of blood instantly hit Su Len. These tentacles of blood attacked very quickly. In just a moment, Su Len was attacked hundreds of times. The thunder shield only lasted for 2 seconds before cracks appeared. Advanced Mage Armor. Advanced Energy Protective Barrier. Advanced Deflection Force Field Protection. Rays of spiritual light flashed across Sullen's body. The protective spells that he had prepared in advance were released in an instant. Invisible barriers opened up. The moment the thunder shield shattered, it directly blocked the evil god's incarnation's attack. Silver Dragon Inversed Scales Spear. The shadow of a silver dragon appeared on Sullen's body. Then, with a blinding flash of lightning, it suddenly attacked the evil god's incarnation in front of him. Endless lightning instantly wrapped around it. As the evil god, its power was completely opposite to Sullen's. The blood light on its body was constantly being worn down by the lightning. At this moment, Su Len suddenly felt his heart palpitate. A sense of danger enveloped his heart. Without hesitation, Sullen's body flashed as he tried to retreat. Boom! Just as he was about to retreat, a dazzling red light swept over him like a hot knife through butter. The lightning that had been wrapped around the evil god's incarnation was also worn down by the red light. Wherever the red light went, an evil, chaotic, and crazy corrosive energy came out. Although this kind of energy was not very damaging, it had a very disgusting ability. It could corrode other people, and it was very difficult to get rid of. But this kind of explosive power cost a lot of energy, and the cooldown time was very long. After using his talent, his sixth sense, to dodge the attack, Su Len rushed forward again. After the explosion, the evil god's body's blood light became even dimmer. A round of extremely effective chain of fireballs appeared again. After casting that spell, Su Len threw out 5 lightning whips. The evil god's incarnation was sent flying again. Boom! 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 The evil god's giant body was pierced again. The blood light on its body was used up. This time, its wounds did not heal as quickly as before. Instead, there was a hideous gash. Now, Su Len could see the evil god's incarnation's scary, twisted soul. That was the evil god's soul origin, but it was not all of it. It was only a part of it. This time, to take revenge on Su Len, the evil god had given up a lot. It had given up a part of its soul origin and god power. Evil gods relied on blood sacrifices and sacrifices to grow. But blood sacrifices made gods crazy. Evil gods were a collection of chaotic powers, and now, they were even crazier. The evil god in front of Han Sen had lost its sense of self. It had become a collection of all kinds of negative energy and chaotic consciousness. When Su Len absorbed the god's divinity, it had a strong consciousness. So, when he absorbed the god's divinity, he spent a lot of effort to wipe out the consciousness of the god's divinity. That was difficult, and it took a lot of time. But it also brought him many benefits. He would not be affected by the consciousness of the god's divinity. He would not become a puppet controlled by the god's divinity. Dazzling lightning swept across. After losing its powerful regenerative ability, the evil god's incarnation was no match for Su Len. Under Su Len's constant attacks, it could only retreat again and again, with more and more wounds appearing on its body. Chapter 490. Thunderstorm Spell. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and countless lightning bolts rolled back and forth in the dark clouds. A bolt of lightning as thick as a water bucket descended from the sky and instantly struck the evil god's incarnation. Without enough power to quickly regenerate, endless lightning instantly drowned it. Lightning Spear. Endless lightning power instantly gathered in Sullen's hand, and a lightning spear formed completely from lightning power appeared in Sullen's hand. In the next second, he threw the lightning spear and instantly hit the evil god's incarnation, which was still in a stiff state. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. The evil god's incarnation's body was extremely stiff and fixed on the spot. The evil god's incarnation's body shattered like crystal glass, and powerful lightning burst out from its body, illuminating the entire valley in an instant. The evil god's incarnation's entire body disintegrated into countless tiny dust particles bit by bit. A gust of wind blew past, and the evil god's incarnation's body disappeared without a trace. Ah! A miserable wail sounded. Just as the evil god's incarnation's body was completely destroyed, the countless souls that it had absorbed just now surged out of its dissipated body. As these souls had only been absorbed for a short period of time, the evil god of the Heartless had no time to absorb and digest these souls. Therefore, these souls were basically still complete. They were just a little distorted because they were contaminated with the chaotic energy of the evil god's body. Soul-binding spell. A spiritual light rose from Sullen's body and quickly imprisoned a part of the evil god's soul core that wanted to escape. Endless lightning power turned into lightning chains. These chains crisscrossed and weaved into a large net in midair, as if enveloping the entire world. The evil god's soul, which was mixed in with a large number of spirits, couldn't escape in time and was completely sealed. As a spiritual light flashed, the large net in the sky instantly enveloped downwards. All the spirits and the evil god's soul were trapped in the lightning net. Soul-binding spell. Sulen took out more than 10 magic gems from his storage space. Bolts of lightning turned into countless chains and pulled all the spirits into the magic gems. Those low-level spirits were directly sealed in the magic gems. As the evil god's soul, Sulen specially used a high-quality magic gem to seal it. As the evil god's soul was sealed into the magic gem, the entire magic gem turned purplish-red. A crazy and chaotic aura was constantly emitted from the gem. Just standing nearby made people feel very uncomfortable. Sulen snapped his fingers, and the soul crystals floating in the air fell into his palm. Ding! The battle is over. Congratulations, host. You have successfully killed the evil god Heartless Divine Incarnation. You have received 368,000 experience points. You have obtained 30 high-quality magic gems. You have obtained 2 sets of Star Ocean Silver Sand. Congratulations, host. You have successfully killed the evil god Heartless Divine Power Incarnation. You have obtained Diamond Treasure Chest X2. Congratulations, host. You've won an epic victory. Congratulations, host. Your army has completely wiped out the evil god Heartless Believer's gathering place. You have obtained 103,000 experience points. Evil god Heartless Stronghold Extermination Battle, Battlefield Level, High Legendary. February 1689 of the Huiyue calendar. You discovered a hidden stronghold of the evil god Heartless. After some preparations, you launched a war and successfully wiped out the stronghold of the evil god Heartless Believers. You also killed the evil god Heartless Divine Power Incarnation. Your name is widely spread across the continent. Prestige plus 15. Favorability of various Orthodox churches plus 30. Congratulations, host. Your experience points are full. You have leveled up. Current level, 30. You have obtained 2 free attribute points and 2 skill points. You have obtained Platinum Treasure Chest X2. As the battle ended, a series of system notifications rang in his ears. Sulen dispersed the energy on his body, and the rumbling thunderclouds in the sky also dissipated. The battlefield was a mess. The original altar had long since disappeared in the aftermath of the battle, and the surrounding village was only left with broken walls. Clean up the battlefield and kill all enemies. Leave no one alive in this battle. With Sullen's order, the Northgard city's army began a net-like search of the valley. Not all the enemies had died in the battle just now. Many had taken advantage of the chaos to escape to various parts of the valley, but because there was only one exit, these kobolds had nowhere to run. After arranging for people to clean up the battlefield, Sulen returned to the Northwind Tower. After leaving the follow-up matters to Hathaway and Chrissy, he went to the seclusion room to check on his harvest. The most precious thing in this battle was naturally the divinity crystal. Su Luan checked it and found that this divinity crystal contained 6 points of divinity. It could be said that this was the most divinity Su Luan had ever obtained. However, it wasn't easy to absorb this divinity crystal. He hadn't finished absorbing the Brain Hunter's divinity crystal, so he could only slowly absorb this divinity crystal. Currently, Sulen needed about a month to absorb a single point of divinity. If he wanted to absorb all of it, he would need half a year. However, this was already a fat piece of meat in his mouth. There was no rush to eat it. He opened the storage space and opened the 2 diamond treasure chests and the 2 platinum treasure chests together. A series of beautiful special effects flashed, and the sound of a system notification rang in his ears. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the item 9 transformations golden pill * 1 bottle. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the item wishing crystal * 1 bottle. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the diamond treasure chest. You have obtained the item nature god crystal * 1 bottle. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the diamond treasure chest. You have obtained the book Levitating Ring Theory and Production. When the light faded, Sulen couldn't wait to take out the 4 items to check. Sulen had already obtained a bottle of 9 transformations golden pill. This kind of pill was very powerful. Each pill could increase 5 free attribute points. It was a rare item. Sulen beamed with joy as he put away the bottle of pills. The second treasure chest contained a crystal called the Wishing Crystal. Sulen curiously picked up the crystal and looked at it. This crystal looked clear and transparent. There were no impurities in it. It looked very beautiful. This crystal also contained a strange power. Sulen didn't know what this power was for. After playing with the crystal for a while, Sulen asked the system to appraise it. Wishing crystal, a special kind of crystal bred by nature. It has a special power. It is said that Jinn elemental spirits like this kind of crystal very much. When using the wishing spell, you can use the wishing crystal as an item of exchange. When negotiating with the Jinn elemental spirits, the wishing crystal can obtain a higher value. This is actually an item used for the wishing spell. After reading the introduction of the system, Sullen's eyes moved slightly. Although the wishing spell was said to be able to grant wishes, in fact, this spell had many traps and the price to pay was also high. Now it seemed that with this wishing crystal, Sulen could make a wish without paying any price. Of course, when using the wishing spell, one still had to strictly follow the rules of the wishing spell. The Jinn elemental spirit's ability to take advantage of loopholes was not inferior to the devils of Bator. In the past, there were more than 1 or 2 wizards who were cheated by these Jinn elemental spirits. The wizard who wished for immortality still didn't know which corner of the multiverse he was sealed in. The nature crystal was a green crystal the size of a palm. There was rich natural energy on it and even a little divinity of nature. This crystal could be directly absorbed to increase one's own divinity. It was much better than the divinity crystal Sulen had before. He didn't need to spend time to eliminate the evil consciousness in the divinity crystal. He could directly absorb it. Of course, in addition to direct absorption, this nature crystal also had other effects. For example, it could improve the surrounding environment. It could also be used to purify the power of pollution and chaos in the divinity crystal in Sullen's hand. Of course, this purification effect was limited. It could also be used directly on a druid. This would allow the druid to obtain a large amount of natural energy and even directly become a big druid. The nature crystal quickly turned in his hand. Sulen already had a plan in his mind. He was going to try it in a few days. The principle and making of floating rings. When he read this book, even Sulen couldn't help but laugh. This was simply like meeting a pillow when he was sleepy. He planned to build a floating city. In addition to the problem of energy, there was also the problem of the floating rings. The floating rings were the key to building a floating tower. At the same time, it was also an important part of building a floating city. The manufacturing technology of the floating rings was only mastered by a few wizard organizations. If the elemental pool was the energy source of the wizard tower, then the floating rings were the engine. The manufacturing of the floating rings required a lot of precious resources. At the same time, it also required a deep knowledge of runes and grandmaster alchemy skills. Sulen simply flipped through the book. This kind of floating rings required a lot of technical skills. He couldn't make it yet. The main material of the floating rings was mithril. Some adamantine, orichalcum, starry silver sand, arcane dust, and many other materials needed to be added. These materials were processed according to a special method and refined into a special silver alloy. Then, the runes were engraved on the floating rings according to a special method and pattern. Finally, a runic array was formed. Each rune was formed by a combination of a larger number of magic patterns. These runes were combined to form a larger runic array. There couldn't be any mistakes in the manufacturing of such a floating ring. Otherwise, there would be a big problem. If there was a problem with the floating ring during flight, the consequences would be terrifying. Sulen planned to study the book, The Principle and Making of Floating Rings, with Hathaway. Although he couldn't make it now, it didn't mean that he couldn't do it in the future. Now that his wizard level had reached the advanced level, it was only a matter of time before he became a legendary wizard. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.